I see.
This is my backup recording, just in case anything goes wrong, we'll at least have, it needs to get, it gets everyone in. I mean, I can also move it forward, but,
I think so.
but oh, we want the projector to at least, it's not gonna be very visible, but.
I went to sleep. Yes.
Oh. Right. I'm hearing. Okay.
On the PDF. There's a couple of short ones. So I've just come up with I'm getting Joe as well. And then, now, Susan. Sorry. I just hate to start without how these don't work. Who are hosting us. So sorry again. I'm just trying to troubleshoot some problems. Well, I think we are ready to start. We might have a few interruptions, but you know, this is all in the family. We are going to keep it light, although the subject matter is far from it. Very serious, but we may have a couple of people trickle in, and I see that video might be starting our Zoom part of the operation might be starting momentarily. Should I wait another minute?
Yeah.
Or I can do my introductions. Nobody needs to record me.
It's for our.
Sorry, oh, I was just recording as a backup. No, you can keep that going.
If you're wondering the unusual closeness of this microphone, because the only way I can hear me, so I have to like, yes. If at any point you can't hear me or any of our speakers, please let us know. Again, we're gonna keep it very informal. Agent, when you're ready, just give me the signal. Anticipation. It's like a lot of gold. we'll make sure to make up the time along the way. We are all gonna keep our remarks awfully short. At least also possible. But Adrian, maybe I can just start with a few things.
Yes.
Yes, okay. So you all been hearing me talk, but I haven't introduced myself. I am Maria Teresa Rojas. I am the Associate Director at Herstory Writers Network and your MC for the day. Well, it's my pleasure to give you a warm welcome, and I now think it's literally and physically and philosophically a warm welcome this beautiful day. A warm welcome to all of you. On behalf of our founder, Erica Duncan, and our colleague, Lady Gonzalez, and all of us at Herstory Writers Network. Thank you all for finding your way here. Yay, that's a really huge. And I want to welcome shortly the people who will be joining us virtually. But it really gives us great pleasure to see you here in person. We expect more people to continue to trickle in. But I also want to take just a moment to give a special thanks to our funders and our partners, Joe Murphy from Humanities New York, Susan Shekel from Stony Brook. An amazing partner and supporter, but honestly, we could not be here without Adrian Unger from a huge thanks. We made this happen, and he's continuing to make it happen for us. We are grateful to all of Stony Brook for hosting us. Very quickly, I will just simply give you an overview of the program, but if you don't have a copy of it, please make sure that you pick one up in the back. But we are going to, I'm going to invite now Susan to make a few welcoming remarks, followed by Joe Murphy, and then what we've all been waiting for to hear from. Yes, waiting to hear from the Honorable Judge Fernando Camacho. I'll come back after his remarks, and then we'll switch to the first panel, and we'll take it from there. There is a break, as you see it. We might have to make adjustments. We will have to on the program, but we'll have some more coffee and other goods for you. And I'll come back in a moment. So now, Susan, please, thank you.
I am so happy to welcome all of you to the Humanities Institute at Stony Brook. And I was going to thank all of the same people that Maria Teresa just thanked. So let me just second her thanks of everyone who made this possible. Our funding for this project and for this event through Humanities New York. We were so happy to be one of the cohort of organizations that received a post-incarceration humanities partnership grant, and it has truly been a partnership. The way that Humanities New York has managed this, just yay, go Joe, has been to really create a cohort where we learn from each other, those who are doing work related to incarceration and post-incarceration in particular. And that's been tremendously enriching for everyone. So I'm so grateful to Humanities New York. And I think I will repeat it, even though Maria Teresa said this. Adrian has been heroic, single-handedly managing the crazy Stony Brook bureaucracy, the logistics to make this happen, and now at the very end, very grumpy technology, keeping her cool and humor and grace throughout. So thank you so much, Adrian. And then, of course, I am deeply grateful for the partnership that we have with Herstory Writers Network. Thanks to Maria Teresa and Mary McGarity, who have worked with Herstory on the logistics for this event in particular. But thanks especially to Erica Duncan, who I met 5 years ago. So let's, a hand for Erica Duncan. I looked back on my computer to see when did all of this begin, because it feels that I've known Erica forever, and ever since the Humanities Institute has been partnering with Herstory, it has opened an entirely new world, so it's easy to lose track of time. But it was 5 years ago, come May, that I met Erica who was then the director of the Humanities Institute at Stony Brook, Adrián Perez Melgoza. They were both receiving funding from the Hagedorn Foundation, and the wise people at Hagedorn said, I think you need to meet each other. And that was the beginning. I went to the event that Erica gave, just giving a sample of the kind of work she does. This was with young writers who were newcomer students. And I was absolutely amazed. And I thought, we have to find a way to bring some of the wisdom, some of the passion that Erica brings to writing for justice to the students at Stony Brook. It had such power and immediacy. And so that's when we sat down, and together we found ways to gain funding that would enable graduate students at Stony Brook to learn the Herstory method of teaching memoir writing. And we created an internship for undergraduates. It's now been 5 years, and it built from a single workshop with about 5 students to now 60 to 80 undergraduates at Stony Brook every year are able to learn from Erica Duncan and the community partners she brings together. It has been truly transformational, and she has introduced me to some of the best people I've ever met. So that is, I am so deeply grateful. I met the people working through Strong Youth. I was able to meet the people who run the National Coalition for Community Writing, through which we expanded the fellowship that started here to reach out to those who are interested in learning the Herstory method and putting it to work in the world across the country and overseas. The best people gather around Erica Duncan. I think everyone in this room has figured that out, but it is true, and I am so grateful for that. She has introduced me to people at other colleges across Long Island, many of whom are here today, from St. Joseph's, Adelphi, Hofstra, Old Westbury. I've got to make sure I don't miss any because there's so darn many universities on this island. Oh, Long Island University. But again, the people who Erica connects to and who connect to her and understand the value of her work are the best people. And I have found so much energy, so much inspiration from working with those people. And again, it is because of Erica that this has happened. And I'm really glad that Herstory changed its name to the Herstory Writers Network, because network is exactly what Erica creates. All those drawn to her pretty soon find connections with each other, and it becomes the kind of networking that brings joy rather than the frustration we're dealing with the network now, brings joy, energy, and simply takes off in ways one could never expect. So thank you to Herstory. This partnership is so precious to the Humanities Institute at Stony Brook, the students at Stony Brook, and the communities that you have connected us to. So thank you. And I will pass, well, we'll pass each other as we go to the micro to Joe.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Joe Murphy. I am the Director of Grant Making at Humanities New York, and I'll be very brief with my comments here. I think Susan very deftly described the richness of the network. That is the best name for this. That Erica, Mary Teresa, and Mary, and everyone else at Herstory's Writers Network have cultivated over the decades, and here we are today to look at just the tip of the iceberg, as it were, of the great work that has taken place over the last year or so. I just want to, I won't add to what Susan has said. I think it suffices as far as what kind of work is going on here and how valuable this network is to Long Island, but also New York State. So I'll keep my remarks limited to Humanities New York's role. Herstory is right now part of our post-incarceration humanities partnership grantee cohort. It's the first ever grant cohort that my organization has put into place, and we're going to continue this program into the next year or beyond. We hope and expect Herstory to remain a leader of that cohort. So Humanities New York is the New York State affiliate of the National Endowment for the Humanities. And as such, we are a public humanities organization in the sense that we try to reduce barriers to critical thinking, dialogue, and reflection about the humanities. Essentially, the question, what does it mean to be a human? But from various vantage points, depending on where you find yourself in New York. And so the Post-Incarceration Humanities Partnership grant program is designed to address that question from the perspective of incarceration and mass incarceration. And if anyone has questions about that program, as director of grant making, I'd be happy to chat with you later today about it at any time. I'll spare you the details now, but I do want to talk about and reiterate just how important Herstory has been to this pilot program, and we've been building it out with a $1.5 million grant from Mellon. This program will be expanding over the next couple of years, and that's owing in very large part to the creativity and commitment of Herstory Writers Network. So I want to thank Erica and everyone at Herstory, and I want to thank Susan and Humanities Institute. And now I'll hand it over, as it were, to the Honorable Judge Fernando Camacho. Judge.
Right, good morning. First of all, thank you so much. Everyone who had something to do with putting this program together. Thank you, Eric, for inviting me. I'm honored. And I'm honored today to share with you a few snippets of my life. Some soul meetings, as Erica would say, that have shaped me, my life, professionally and personally. Many years ago, I was on the Sacticos Parkway, getting off toward Montauk Highway. There's a traffic light, and there was traffic, so we were stopped right by the shoulder. So as I'm waiting there, I look over to my left, and there's a car. Two troopers are searching a car. It's fascinating. They were tearing it apart, taking out the seats. And one trooper was obviously more senior than the other, teaching the other trooper how to do it. So I said, okay, that's strange. But I look over to the left, and there's a woman of color standing there. Obviously, she was not a security threat because they were oblivious to her. She's sobbing hysterically. And then I look down, there's a small child, 6 or 7 years old, holding onto her leg, saying, "Mommy, it's okay, Mommy. It's okay, Mommy. Please stop, Mommy, it's okay." So my first instinct is, I'm a prosecutor. I stand for fairness and justice. Let me get out of this car and tell these guys it all. As the traffic light turned, I looked away, so not to say, and drove off. Over the years, I tried to justify it to myself. That would have been reckless. You would have got roughed up, probably arrested, maybe lost your law license. What good would that have done? Then I say, nah, should have got out of the car. But you know what? Some of the stories of our failures are more powerful than the stories of our successes. So now going forward, every time that I had I was lacking the will to do the right thing, I take myself back to the Sacticos Parkway. And that my fast forward, 1997, I'm a judge in Brooklyn, biggest courtroom in the courthouse, 200 people, 150 person in the calendar, a 16-year-old boy comes out of the holding cell. A woman stands up, "Judge. All the officers start converging to take her out and to stop her. I said, no, let her speak. She said, "Judge, please help me. I'm going to lose my son to the system." It hit me. This young mother is worried about losing her 16-year-old son to the system. And she has a right to worry. Or please move me. compelled me. We started adolescent diversion courts, where we didn't send kids to jail. We got them resources, we got them support, try to keep them out of state prison. I started an adolescent diversion court in Brooklyn, then in Queens Criminal Court, then in Queens Supreme Court. And then I came back out to Suffolk County in 2008 to start the Suffolk County Youth Park, again, with a mission to stop this incarceration of our kids and the reincarceration thanks to the pleas of that young mother. Fast forward 2003, standing in a arraignment court in Queens, playing what I used to call Let's Make a Deal. Persons arrested for prostitution in New York City used to be incarcerated. And it would be like this. These would be 16-year-old, actually they were probably younger because they lied about their age. The DA prosecutor would say, Judge, 40 days. The illegal alien would say, Judge, 20 days. Judge, okay, 30 days, take charge. I knew it inside, these were not criminals, they were victims. Yet, we continued to do it. One evening, I'm sitting there in night court, and there comes this little tiny girl, young girl, like 15. She lied about her age, and she's standing there, and I'm about to say 30 days. I said, stop the madness right now. I want to hear her story. I want to listen to her. Why are you here, kid? And I listened to her story. I heard her. And after that, I heard dozens and dozens of other stories, the same types of stories. I'm going to share one with you today. Oh, there it is. Of a participant in my part. Just to give you a sense of who we're dealing with. I was in Covenant House and I met him in the park. I had nowhere to go, no food, no money. I was 15, he was 25 or 26. On the track, I saw females get stabbed, get doped up, slip Mickeys by their pimps forcing drugs into their systems. I seen a gun pointed at a female's head. I've been in life and death situations, getting choked out, getting beat up for no reason, or because you don't bring home a lot of money. You get really stressed out in this game. If you're not doing drugs when you come in, you certainly leave with it. You don't care about yourself. Really, you feel there's no help, and you just want to go to the suicide house. That story and those other stories that I heard moved me and compelled me, 2003, to start the first human trafficking detention court, where persons arrested for prostitution were no longer incarcerated. Instead, they were given support and services. We now have human trafficking detention courts in most jurisdictions throughout New York State. There are sometimes the stories that move us most are saddest. And but it depends how you perceive them. So let me tell you a really sad story that has moved me and shaped me. You may remember the Southern State case, where a little family was driving down the Southern State, coming home from a family outing out east. And the drunk driver was speeding and drag racing and clipped the back of a little minivan. In the minivan were the father driving, the mother, and in the back were an 8-year-old boy in a seatbelt and his 3-year-old daughter, his 3-year-old sister. They clip the back, father goes unconscious, fan goes up to the shoulder. Mom is able to get out. The doors, the locks closed. The children are alive. Father's unconscious. Mom is outside. Fan's on fire. I presided over that trial. And I was okay. I got through it until first responder testified when we first got into the van. And this is the scene that he described. When I got into and the medical examiner testified these children were all unconscious when the car was on fire. Testified, I went into the back of the van and the 8-year-old boy had taken off his seatbelt and he was laying over his 3-year-old sister. You take that image, it is so sad, so depressing that it makes you want to quit. And I was done. I used to drive by the spot and look around. I was like, why am I doing this? And then my wife said, it was very wise, said, you're looking at it the wrong way. You're perceiving it the wrong way. Now, instead of looking at it as such a sad, awful story, what a beautiful, of unconditional love by an 8-year-old. What a beautiful act by an innocent. So now we have free will. We can choose to perceive things the way we want to. Now I choose to perceive that image as a beautiful act of unconditional love. And I use that all the time in our work because it's difficult work. Learned about forgiveness from a family from Scotland. Aside from working in youth parts, I used to also handle all the vehicular homicides in Suffolk County. One such case was a young man from Scotland who came over to America to make money as a caddy, Shinnecock, riding his bicycle one day, gets run down by a drunk driver, 21-year-old guy in his SUV who was drunk and high, killed him. The young caddy's fiance and father came over from Scotland for the sentencing. And we're waiting to start, everybody's waiting. I said to them, what's going on? What's the holdup? Judge, you got to look outside. Look outside on the bench. Is the 21-year-old who's about to go to jail. And the fiance of the caddy and the father, they're all hugging and crying. They walk into the courtroom. The 21-year-old is sobbing. He's being held on one arm by the fiance, on the other by the father. How could that not move you? To learn forgiveness. And I've done that professionally and personally. Jeremiah, little 15-year-old walks into my courtroom from the back. A bad crime, serious crime. First 5 times, I'm trying to get him to talk, open up. Jeremiah, what's going on? Jeremiah, please, what's happening? After 10 times of this, my staff is like, Judge, it's a law school, you're not gonna be able to help this kid. So I called my friends at the Juvenile Detention Center, Mr. Ivey. I said, Mr. Ivey, tell me about this kid, Jeremiah. What's he like? Judge, he's very respectful, very quiet. What does he do, Mr. Ivey? He plays chess. He goes, what? He plays chess. His grandfather taught him, his father's grandfather says he's pretty taught him. He plays on the computer and he plays against us, and he's really good. Next time Jeremiah comes into my court, Jeremiah, Jeremiah, I understand you like chess. And I understand you're really good. I learned about chess. I had conversations with him over the next several appearances about chess. And then we started talking about other things. Jeremiah didn't go to state prison. He's doing great. Still going to chess tournaments, coming to visit me. Joshua, tall, big 17-year-old, walks into my courtroom, looking like Hannibal Lecter, in a spit mask and shackles. I said, what's going on here? Judge, he's been a problem for in the facility. He's always fighting. He's always spitting at the officers. I said, what's going on? So I can't see his face because he's got this mask, Hannibal Lecter mask. I said, Jeremiah, I can't even see his face. He goes, and then very quiet, just whispers, and I could hardly hear it. Judge, I am tired of being treated like a mad dog. Jeremiah told me about cruelty of the system that treats mentally ill people in an unconscionable way. We incarcerate them. We put them in masks. We put them in cages. We put them in solitary. We make believe they don't exist. We treat them like they're subhuman. Shame on us. Joshua motivated me to fight that system. We need to do better for mentally ill individuals who come into the court system. Joshua's also doing great. Thriving. And then go to state prison. No longer wearing that silly mask that nobody should have to wear. And last but not least, again, most stories, most powerful stories are the saddest ones. And I want to tell you about Terry. So Terry came to my court when he was 15 years old for a gunpoint robbery of a store. He comes in, and thanks to the pleas of that woman, I went, first, why are you here, kid? Why are you here? Let's fix this. I hear his story. Terry was removed from his home when he was 2 years old because his mother was neglecting him and abusing him. He went from relative to relative, from foster home to foster home. He was physically abused, sexually abused, emotionally abused, psychologically abused. He once said, I didn't know kids didn't get beat by belts. I thought everybody did. He then started getting placed in facility after facility after facility. Finally gets released to an aunt, commits this robbery, comes before me. And I got to know him over 2 years. Terry, and a beautiful soul. He was smart. He was charming. He was talented. He was compassionate. He was kind. He loved music. He wrote, performed his own music. He gave me a couple of discs, which I still play in my car all the time. So after 2 years, Terry didn't go to state prison. And we had his graduation. We patted ourselves on the back and said, we did it, we did it, we did it. Great, Terry. Oh, I love you guys. And we sent him home. Back to Wine Dance, back to his grand's house. And a few years ago, I got the news that on Thanksgiving Eve, he went to his dad's basement and took his life. The trauma was just too much. It was just too much to bear. We didn't get that piece. We should have, could keep coming back. He taught me about the failures of the system, multiple failures across many different systems, county agencies, child welfare, county attorneys, courts, judges. Nobody was able to connect with Harry like I connected with Jeremiah, because each of us has this little box inside of us. What has a light in it. You can call it your soul, whatever you want to call it. It's what makes us who we are, and it's a light. And when you suffer trauma, armor starts building up around that light because you just don't want to feel the pain anymore. So then because your eyes get dark and you don't have the light anymore. And by finding that little box inside we each have and connecting to that little box, our common humanity, reaching in with such a simple thing as chess. That is what somebody should have been there for Terry. And nobody was. So in his memory, I decided to end my career after 27 years in family court. So I asked for a transfer to family court. I've started the first, what I call the concepts court. The important part is the TS at the end, Terry Smith. And I take all the JDs and the pins in Suffolk County. And I treat them like Terry should have been treated. Because we can't keep failing our kids. So I'll come full circle from listening to the pleas of a young mother in Brooklyn, creating a court part in the memory of a beautiful soul who died too young. Thank you for listening to my stories, and I'm looking forward to spending the rest of the afternoon listening to yours.
George Camacho, thank you so much for sharing with us such vivid stories, such real stories. And you have just experienced the power of stories that you have lived and you have fought for. And then now we can move into this next session of our afternoon, which is to hear stories equally powerful, written by people directly affected. So with that, I thank both Susan, Joe, Josh Camacho, if I could ask you to stay. And now we'll do a little transition. Our founder and artistic director of Herstory Writers Network, Erica Duncan, please come up to the front. Rich, Jessica, Barbara, Morel. Yes. And I think I got everyone. It's part of our first code. Thank you very much. Comes to come. Should I do it?
So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm just so moved by Judge Camacho's speech and, really speaks to everything that I feel that this conference is all about. And also the work that I hope to be doing for the rest of my life, and that I hope that Herstory and all of you will be doing well beyond where any of us are alive for the new generations. And I think that, well, let me tell you, that, we started Herstory, coincidentally, also 27 years ago. And we started really around that simple dare, like, you know, if somebody else could walk in your shoes, like, you know, like, could you change a heart, a mind, a policy? And I guess it was like maybe 8 years into the project that I was training the first cohort of facilitators who have worked with us. And I asked them where they would want to work. And they said they wanted to work in the jails because that was where the silencing was the greatest. And I called up the sheriff and, you know, was fortunate enough that Lieutenant Clerkin, to whom I guess in a way we should dedicate this program. I'm not sure if Bobby got here, her daughter, but you know, she was on the list. Anyway, but one of the key moments there, and we had recorded it and for years used it as our motto, was a woman who started her story. If I let you into my story, will you promise not to judge? It is neither good nor bad. It is just my story. Please just listen. And for many, many years, this was the first thing I would quote. And then I realized what a cruel, judgmental world this is. And that in some ways, it was a false promise that so many people were making. And what I love about Judge Camacho, and I want to say that when we were working on, Barbara Allen is here and on the program, and I spent about a year in Riverhead Jail working with the women there, and everybody would say, oh, do you have Judge Camacho? If you do, you're lucky. And if you don't, forget it. And, you know, but I think that we began a way of storytelling where we were asking people, imagine the most hard-hearted judge, imagine the most hard-hearted politician. And this is long before we even knew Judge Camacho existed. And to have such an extraordinary, magical judge who is talking about the soul. And so for today, and just in terms of our project and the tool we think that we can give to already a lot of fine writing programs that are behind bars, beyond bars, is the idea of a sustained memoir experience that will allow somebody who maybe doesn't have the huge heart and the wanting to learn from the mistakes and the sorrows that you heard in Judge Camacho, but maybe has a little bit of heart. And can we change the system by reaching those who judge, those who control, and those who are studying now to be corrections officers, lawmakers, decision makers. So I think that that is really our goal. To see if our words could have power. And whether we're working with newcomer students who just crossed the border, which is probably our fastest growing, biggest program, or if we're working with people, you know, who are touched by the carceral justice system. I think that writing to show that spirit and soul and to not be judged. So I'm sad that Victoria Roberts, who has done so many things, was the head of reentry for Nassau County, trained as a Herstory facilitator, is currently teaching at Hofstra through Leanna Gorovich, who is here, a course on that is bringing together criminology students and people returning from decades in jail or prison. She couldn't get off work today. I don't understand why they didn't give her the day off. But we are lucky to have a film of her reading at the gala, so she will be our first reader. And as you listen, just hear that the beauty of trying to break this cycle, but also really listening and think about second chances, think about mothers, think about all sorts of things. So.
I wake up. I look for something to wear. I can't wear orange or green. I call down, Mom, you ready? I'm dressed. Yes. I'm in the car with my. I wake up. I look for something to wear. I can't wear orange or green. I call down, Mom, you ready? I'm dressed. I'm in the car with my mom. We drive in silence. I'm thinking, this is my fault. I feel so guilty. I wonder if my mother is thinking the same thing. We pull up to the place. Barbed wire is everywhere. There are lines, long lines. We go and check in. We pass through the metal detectors. I beep. I have to take my bra off. It has underwire. Oh no, my shirt is white, see-through. They give me another shirt. It's not new. It is a shirt that other women in my circumstances have worn. I can leave or I can put the shirt on. I put the shirt on. My mom is already through. She knew not to wear an underwire bra. Did she remember from the time when she came to visit me? I'm through. We sit. We wait. My mom is nervous. This is her first time for this child. We wait some more. My mom looks scared. This is the woman who does not eat cucumbers because she picked bushels of them for 50 cents a bushel in 1954. She was 10 years old then. This is the woman who raised 5 kids alone. She looks small as we wait some more. What's taking so long, she asks. I say I don't know, but I know. They are being strip searched. I cannot tell her that they are in the room naked, bent over, coughing. Why are we here in this fish yellow room? Why are there more women with children than men? The room is supposed to be bright, but the dull, dismal yellow makes it seem dark, even though it's 10 a.m. There are long rows of chairs bolted to the floor. We are seated. There is a raised partition. We hear swoosh, bang. They just roll back the bars. They are coming. I see him. I burst into tears and started saying, I'm sorry, before he can even get to see me. We hugged. No touching, says the guard. If you touch him again, that will be the end of your visit. My son, my firstborn. Hi, Mom. You okay, babe? I'm good, he says. Stop crying, Ma. I can't do this if you keep crying. My brother is my mother's firstborn. I didn't see him come out. My mother does not touch him. She heard what the guard said. Why are they both here? My mother did not use drugs. My brother is here. My mother worked and kept us with food, clothing, shelter. I did none of that. In fact, everyone else took care of my sons, even the sister when they were placed in foster care for a short while. I remember providing shelter when we lived in a farm in Ohio. Is that part of this guilt I feel? Is that why we're here today? My mom, she was the first person that prayed for me to get help. Back then, there was no help. I was a criminal, not a person with a disease. My mother kept the family together. When she found out my kids were in foster care in another state, she was there in 2 days. Now she is here with her daughter, her oldest son, and her grandson. How did we get here? How is my brother, my son asked. He's fine, I answered. He's grown some. He always worries about his little brother. He was the one who took care of him when I was. His little brother was born addicted. Even in my stupor, there was no sound like the crying of a baby going through withdrawal. Piercing, painful, sad. Mom, this ain't your fault, he says now, but I can't help feel, yes, it is. If I had made better choices, you may have made better choices, I tell him. And he says, Grandma made great choices, and my uncle is in this visiting room too. He knew what I was thinking and feeling. How could this young man who is so sensitive and attuned to others be in custody? Do you want me to bail you out, I asked? Do you want me to get you out of here? Everything changes with those two questions. His face becomes hard, his body tense, his eyes narrow to a point, his attitude shifts as fast as the clouds when a storm is coming. What, he says? Now you want to help? My sweet son has let his guard down. His anger had gotten the best of him. Also, now you want to be someone's mother. I hear him continue, but I can't listen to what he's saying. I know he wants me to hug him and rub his back to help him through this like I always have. But instead, he says those things that he needs to say. These things that hurt him to his core. These things that he wants to hurt me to my core with. Those things that make him go way faster than he should have. I'm crying, he's crying, he is mad because he's in this place. He is mad that I chose drugs over him and his brother. Now that I'm clean, I wonder if he felt he had no mother at times. My baby grew up so angry that he took it out on everyone in the streets. I think the anger makes him feel human because he doesn't feel anything else. I want to hug him, but no touching, the officer says. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, and that is definitely, the no touching in this, how do we work to touch parts, in this place where no touching is allowed. And on that note, I'm thrilled to introduce Rich Paul from Strong Youth, who is an intervention counselor of the university program there. And we're going to do something a little bit different. Rather than reading a finished story, so come up with me. I don't know how we'll share the microphone with different heights, but we'll figure. You're
no problem.
Around.
You could also look at
I don't know. Anyway, what's going to take you into is what we call moving from, if your words have power, you know, how would you shape them to change a heart, mind, or policy into our kind of famous page one moment? And where would you like this imaginary reader to meet you? And we first worked with Rich, as you know, on some of the young people he's been mentoring. And why don't you all raise your hands? You know, from strong youth who are telling beautiful stories that we will be airing at a conference in April. But then we thought of how can we really demonstrate? So what we've done is using that whole image that Judge Camacho was talking about. What are those moments of the soul, of transformation? And where are you going to really allow people to see the spirit? And also, what parts of your story are you going to really tell to let people know that there are second chances, to let people know how much people can really grow? And so Rich came up with, I guess, 4 different moments, and we call them kind of moments of power, moments of beauty, moments of truth. So Rich, well, just tell about what your first moment was. And you know, we won't have to fight the hour we did it and last time, but just come here and sort of, that moment that so struck me as you began to talk. And then we went to talking and saying, okay, but what images would the reader see? We always start with the oral imaging for a lot of reasons. It gives a level ground. It doesn't matter whether somebody has all kinds of degrees or somebody's language is the beauty of, you know, a life where there might not have been any formal schooling at all. And, you know, I hear Rich just is bringing this eloquence. Anyway, so tell about the woman. I'll never forget her. I just keep thinking about her. As your sort of first place, you might meet this reader.
Line up. On a child are the words that I hear so routinely as me and a group of my brethren prepare to go to breakfast in the morning. I make sure that I'm on the right side of the line, because if I just happen to be slightly over on the left side of the line, that could open up a world of contention with the officers who routinely, with some of the officers who routinely display racist acts and ways and perceptions. So I make sure that I'm on the right side of the line at 6:45 a.m. in the morning. Although it's early, I'm extremely aware and alert, because I'm constantly thinking about my protection and my survival. And I start walking the child. If I stop for a moment, you know, anger, sadness, manipulation, deceit, oppression, fear, these are all the thoughts that go through my body unconsciously. These are all the things that I'm feeling, that I've experienced, that the brothers beside me have experienced, and we pass that on to each other unconsciously, almost even universally. And as I walk, the same way I've been walking for the past 5 years, the same way I'm gonna continue walking for the next 5 years, I hear a voice, a very small voice, from a woman, very short elderly woman. And although her voice was very small, it was impactful. And she said, "Hello, how you doing? Have a good day." And she looked at me and she smiled. And she kept walking. However, I don't know what it is, but it was just something about that woman's words that touched that little box inside of my heart. And it raised my spirits. And I took those words with me to breakfast. And I just kept thinking about it until I went back to my cell. And as I get in my cell, I realized that in this world of negativity, in this world of oppression, something as simple as some nice words and somebody greeting you and acknowledging you like a human can do so much for the soul. And it did so much for my soul and for my spirit. So as I take that moment, as I take myself out of my cell, and then I kind of transfer into this moment, I look at all of you, and most importantly, I look at the two gentlemen, the two young kings who I've had the honor and opportunity to be able to mentor and learn from. And I'm very conscious of my words because I understand that in a world that can seem like everybody is against you, in a world that can seem like you have the weight of the universe on your shoulders, it could be that one, "Hello, how are you doing? How was your day?" that can change your mind frame and ultimately change your life. And if that did that for me, for that one day, imagine if some of our young people, and even all of us, can experience those moments daily. That's the first one.
So, you can tell what a remarkable storyteller and soul. And yet, as we work together, boy, it's developed so much even since the last time. And it's like grows and grows from that just simple moment of telling me one woman talked. And she said, "Good morning, how are you?" And it changed my life. And that became the sort of part of the hopefully book we were talking about
Yes,
that
ma'am.
Rich will be writing. So the next moment, as we were talking, maybe about a month ago, beginning to develop this, was just that one person that you were walking with, the think moment. So tell that one, the never stop thinking.
Absolutely. Back in the hallways. We walk in these hallways, and just to give you a little context about the hallways, but the context is really coming from my memory because I think about these things daily because this is my reality. So as I'm walking through a hallway where a few days before, I remember seeing a trail of my friend's blood leading all the way from the rec yard, down the hall, all the way to the left, to the medical room. And I didn't actually see him come in from the yard, but the only thing I had to do is look down and follow the blood, and it could lead me right to where he was. As I continue to walk through these hallways where I just saw a gentleman who I didn't know the gentleman, but he did have on green pants and green shirt like me, and he could have very well been me. I saw this gentleman being attacked and jumped by 10 officers with nightsticks, screaming, "Stop resisting!" But I don't know how much resisting an individual could do from that environment, or from that position rather. As I walk through these hallways, all of these thoughts are going through my mind as they usually do. And I guess I had a face of anger that I didn't realize. And a gentleman who had been incarcerated for 20 years, he stopped me and he didn't know me, but he stopped me and he said, "Come here, young blood." And you know, I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Listen, I don't know what's going on with you. I don't know what you're experiencing, but this is an environment where you have to be thinking every moment of every second, because the one time, that 1 second that you fail to think, your life could change forever. You can lose your life forever, or you will make a split-second decision that will ensure that you spend the rest of your life behind these bars." He said, "Take it from me. I am proof. I have made one of those decisions, and I have been here for the past 25 years. And as simple as it sounds, in that moment, what he said was so profound. Even in your sleep, you have to be aware, you have to be thinking, because every decision can be extremely detrimental. So once again, as I remove myself from that space and I step into this space with you all, as an intervention counselor, these are some of the moments that I share with the young people who I build with. Because although this is not prison, this is a place where if you make a wrong decision in a split second, your life could change forever. And unfortunately, I've seen it happen to so many of our young people, like Judge Camacho mentioned. And I've also seen those split-second decisions flip. And I've seen individuals like these two individuals who I have with me today, who I keep bringing it back to, and I probably will keep bringing it back to, because they have made split-second decisions that have benefited them, right? And I'm very proud of them because they continue to illustrate that they and we are not who sometimes society paints us out to be.
Wow. Already see how this book is unfolding. And you know, we don't know whether the second part would be 50 pages in or almost right away. So now skip to the one where you're talking to Mia and the memory of that, and then we'll have the fourth section. So.
Wow. Mia, so to tell a story, like to take a page out of Judge Camacho's book and tell a story of a young person, 15 years old, this young person that I've had the honor of working with for years, was arrested for a string of armed robberies. And served 6 months in a juvenile detention center that so much resembles the county jail. And at 17 years old, I remember not having a job and wanting to find a way to make money for myself. So, you know, an individual handed me a gram of crack and told me that this was the way that I could provide for myself. And I remember being so eager to engage in something that I really had no knowledge of. And then I was arrested. And then I remember coming home at 19 years old, and I was just so tired from living my life in this way, where I just wanted to do something different. And I remember just saying, like, I just want to have a job and I don't want to look over my shoulder anymore. I just want to do the right thing. And I remember remember going to a job agency and they said that they have a job opening. And I remember that individual scammed me out of my money and I was so hurt. And they said that they have another job opportunity and I was leery to take it, but I didn't have anything to lose. And the requirements for this job was that you had to have street involvement and you had to have been incarcerated before. I said, wow. I meet these requirements. And that job was a part of a program which was at then the Nassau University Intervention Program, and it was run by a woman named Razmia Zatar and Sergio Argueta. And I remember thinking that at this young age, I felt like I've done so much negative things, or I've lived so much of a street life that maybe I couldn't do the right thing, or maybe I wasn't good enough or even intelligent enough to be successful in society. And I remember talking to Mia one day and she said, listen, if you've been living your life a certain way for, let's just say, 10 years, I don't expect you, and nobody should expect you to change in one day or 1 week or 1 month or maybe even 2 years. The same amount of time that you've been living your life a certain way, the same amount of time that you created these habits, it may take that same amount of time for you to make a complete 180 transition. You just have to stay dedicated to that journey and stay dedicated to that change. And I remember her telling me these words over 15 years ago, but they were so profound because they gave me hope. So at 22, when I was being sentenced to 11 years in prison in a courtroom, I did the math. I said, you know what? I've been living like this way since I was about 12. So 22, so 12 to 22 was 10 years. I said, you know what? Maybe this is the opportunity for me to make that 180 transition and change into my life. And it was her words that gave me the extra added motivation to utilize my time in a positive way to change my mind frame, to attend Cornell University, to earn my degree, and to come out here and be blessed with the opportunity to build, nurture, educate, and learn from my younger brothers in the aim and with the hopes of them not making the same decisions that I.
Art, when we were talking about reentry, which is very, very important, I think, in terms of the work ahead. And was just this heartbreaking story, which I see not as the end of all of your book, but again, the moment of transition of sort of like into the life and who you are now. So just tell that first job story when you came out.
Oh.
You know, just the blue uniforms and the garbage.
So happy to be released with my college education and thousands of books that I've read, and so eager to be of service to my community. And I started applying for these jobs, and The interviews seem to go so great because I've practiced them a million times in my head. The eye contact, the handshake, the articulation of my skills, what I bring to the table, my eagerness to help make the corporation a success as a team player. The smiles that I receive from everybody in return. Until they say, oh, just do this last part, just, just fill this out, just see criminal background. And you're hired already. Once the background check comes back, we'll start. And after 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40 applications and interviews, I start to think, like, hold on. Maybe these things don't mean anything at all, right? So, I'm dead broke. And I'm a well-respected, before my incarceration, I was a well-respected person in the streets and the life that I came from, which has its own economy, right? Where individuals are making money hand over fist sometimes, right? And these same individuals, because that's how they understand how to show love, they offer me opportunities to make the same amount of money that they're making. But I look myself in the mirror over 20,000 times while I was incarcerated, and I promised myself that I believed enough in my intelligence and my diligence that I can be successful on my own doing things the right way. So I turned down every advance and I continue to apply for jobs with $10 in my pocket that I got from my mom or my sister. And a few months in, I was introduced to a program. The name of this program is Ready, Willing, and Able, and it's a program for individuals who are either homeless or just returning home from prison. And since I couldn't get a job anywhere else, I went to this program as they were paying me $15 an hour, but I figured $15 an hour is better than $10 every 2 weeks that I was getting while I was incarcerated. So I step into this program that's in Brooklyn and I live in Queens. So I have to wake up 3 in the morning to take the bus, 2 buses and 2 trains, so I can get there by 6:30 in the morning. And I have this suit, this blue suit, blue pants, and this blue shirt. And now I respect and I honor that blue shirt and I honor those blue pants. But at the time, I just couldn't see it. And this job was, I was cleaning the streets, right? So I would have a broom and I would have a dustpan, right, with my 4.0 GPA, and I was cleaning the streets, and I would see hundreds of individuals walking by me, and I'm so well respected in my community. I would just hope that I don't see anybody that I know, because I would be so embarrassed. And it's not that I have a problem doing the work or working hard, but you see me with my uniform, so you know not only do you know what I do, but you know that I'm either homeless or you know that I've been previously incarcerated. So you already have a preconceived conception of who I am, what I can do, and what my capabilities are. But once again, this is the only job that I could get that's legitimate on the books. So I come every day after my 3-hour journey and I sweep the streets. And as I sweep the streets, I work 60 hours a week because I said, I still have a plan, right? Proper preparation prevents poor performance. So I make my plan, and hey, a woman said, "Hey, Rich." And I get petrified because I'm like, wow, only people that know me call me Rich. And I look, and she kind of like ran off. I said, wow, I don't know if she's gonna go back in. I don't even know who she is. I gotta find her. I don't know if she's gonna go back and tell everybody what I do, what I gotta do. But, you know, hard times builds character and integrity. And as I look back, I know that I had to work that job. And first of all, that's an amazing program. I had to work that job personally in order for me to appreciate, truly appreciate, one, the struggle that my brothers and my sisters go through when returning back to society, and two, the opportunities that I will be given in the future, such as right now, to tell my story and the story of so many other individuals who just want a chance and who may not have the fortitude to push through when they were truly looking for an opportunity.
So you can see what an amazing process this is. And our final reader for this session, I think we'll probably run over a few minutes with the first panel, maybe take a slightly shorter break and be pretty much on time. Anyway, I am thrilled to introduce Jessica Lowell Mason, who came to us in the heart of the pandemic as part of our first national training cohort, and came with this amazing body of poetry and critical writing and passion, but also as the founder of an organization called That Woman in the Attic, and really looking at what happens to the involuntarily incarcerated mentally ill, or people who say mentally ill, and I slipped into that label, which it's people who have been designated mentally ill by others, and what happens when the society is doing. And she's running an amazing group that's totally over-enrolled as part of the our partnership with Stony Brook Humanities Institute called Reimagining Mental Health Care. There are people in their 80s who have been in straitjackets against their will, and young people who are still experiencing it today. And she is going to take you into the intro of this book that she's been working on. And just as you become her and walk in her shoes in her invitation to terror.
It may hold this. I don't know if it's gonna help, but much better. I don't know if it's better if I talk like this or if I talk like this. This, okay. Thank you so much, Erica. Thank you, and thank you. I am so moved by your stories and your courage and the power of your stories. I am very grateful to be here, grateful to Humanities New York and to Dr. Susan Shekel for all the work that you're doing. I'm going to be reading an excerpt from a memoir chapter piece called An Introduction to Terror. And I hope that you will draw your attention to the ways in which crisis services in our mental health care systems parallel our criminal justice system and work intersectionally with them. Consider this an invitation into terror. It is not a proper invitation. There are no proper invitations into terror, as there is no proper form of terror. There are no best practices to follow. There is no etiquette guide for inviting you into my terror. There is no way for me to invite you in without giving you a fast pass to a nightmare. Like nightmares, terror isn't something you're asked to enter. Terror is all about forced entry, something into which you are catapulted. But I am asking you to hold on to me and choose to enter a terror that is not your own. How is one compelled to enter into another's terror when to tread into the territory of terror, not fantastical terror, but ash and bone terror, is antithetical to sense, even to impulse? There are certain questions that terror asks before you are invited in. And there are questions that you ask of terror when you appear at terror's threshold. Sometimes terror finds you, and at other times terror is waiting for you, lurking in the shadowless dark of a room you will enter with a fist full of dread. For my invitation, the latter is the case. The terror is waiting for you, a predator of alienation that will turn you inside out before it consumes you. If you will enter, then begin here with your hand. Its small crooked fingers wound inward like unsure snails, and the greened over silver comedy and tragedy ring that you've managed to keep on your middle finger since your youth. You are wearing that reminder of the past today, though you don't realize it. It will soon come off. It will not be the first layer of your identity to be peeled away from you. But for now, go back to your hand with an ornament of innocence still on it. Your hand that leads to a wrist swiped with a roller of amber oil, the wrist buttoned tightly in the white cuff of the button-down shirt you are wearing, a shirt you stole from your brother's closet in high school and wore for dapper occasions ever since. You're wearing your favorite, your only, your signature black vest, the one you were wearing 12 years ago when you appeared on the front page of the local newspaper. The vest means something. Its high collar, stiffened upright by the zipper, feels like a signal and a reminder to hold your head up high. And so you do. Such thoughts are thoughts that would do you good right now, but you are not thinking about your vest or your amber aroma or the clothes you stole from closets or your frail middle finger with the discolored ring on it. You're looking at the blue-white sky of shirts, the last sky you will see on the backs of two totally unfamiliar figures in front of you. These bodies are not tall in stature. They do not tower over you. You're the height of a dresser, and they can only be the height of a dresser with a basket on it. These unknown figures are leading you side by side, white button-down shirt to blue button-down shirt, down a narrow hall somewhere. They are not speaking to you, or maybe they are. Perhaps they're looking back at you, telling you they just need to ask you a few questions. But though the thought itself hangs over your head like an unreachable cloud, you are beholden by these figures, by the brush cuts on their balding white scalps, by the empty pockets on their chests, where there should be something, perhaps pens. The gold of the metal badge on the blue and white figure holds your gaze, the gold. Are they wearing uniforms or not? You don't have time to take notice. Now you are in a room. Now you are seated on a chair. Your hand flattens. You have crossed a threshold. You are prepared to speak, and you trust in your innate goodness. You trust in your ability to tell the truth. The truth will save you. This is your creed. But it will not. Not from this. Your mouth opens. The last of the teacher in you that is left turns on and the lesson begins. Only you are trembling uncontrollably, sweating uncontrollably, legs crossed, head held high, truth pouring out. If you miss any fragment of it, it could cost you your life. No one asks you to confess, but you are Catholic and this is your nature. You confess anyway. You don't know what you have done, but it must be something, so you confess everything. Your childhood, your high school years, your transfer across the country, your marriage, the unraveling of it, your deepest secrets, your innermost thoughts, your cynicism. You give them everything. You bare your soul to strangers, to figures, to men with guns in holsters under the table, to men who watch porn when no one else is around, to men who might get off on all you disclose, to men who might be captivated by your stories, your brutality at telling the truth, your willingness to be humiliated for some higher purpose. They will be titillated, they will be won over, and they will throw you away just the same. The terror is not yet unleashed because you're still telling the story. You still have time to convince them of who you are, of what happened in the past, of your innocence. 2 hours pass. You feel your story coming to a close. You have given 2 strangers the cocktail version of your life and included its most intimate details. You have opened your mind to them and given them permission to be voyeurs. You are trying to save your life, but you don't know what is coming or what you feel the need to shield yourself from with the armor of rhetoric from your only defense. If I tell them the truth, if I tell them everything, if I've done nothing wrong, nothing bad can happen to me. If only it was more than a fantasy to believe this. You have believed it your whole life. It has given you solace in every terror you faced down in the past. A delusion? You have forgotten the amber oil, so you can't even offer terror your wrist. You have forgotten smell, and you are losing your senses. Your time is up. Your story is over. Your terror is ready to reveal itself. You know this when the entertained and smiling listeners become officers. The laughter dissipates. You are brutally honest, brutal. This is the last thing you recall the moved listener saying before he becomes an officer. The 2 figures become officers when the laptop in front of them closes. They close it. When it shuts, a door opens. Surely other senses are being lost. The roller coaster inside throws you off the edge. The butterfly inside explodes into 1,000 butterflies. There is no emergency exit from this. At the shutting of the laptop, at the swinging open of the door, the storyteller meets their terror. You are meeting yours. Thank you.
Yeah, so now what we're doing, and we decided not to have a formal panel and to have a lot of interaction with the audience. The new player here who I want to introduce is Barbara Morell, who's the head of the Criminal Justice Department at St. Joseph's College. And we've just done a lot of very, very deep work there with the criminology students, bringing them together with high school students, bringing formerly incarcerated women to read, and looking at issues, looking at causes. So what I'm really going to ask the panel, because the reason we're doing all this work is thinking, can these stories make a difference? Can they change a hard mind policy? And really using this panel and the one we'll be having after the second group of stories as a kind of brainstorming call to action. How can these stories help? How can they change things? So why don't we maybe start with Barbara, since she hasn't spoken yet, and just responses, thoughts?
You were so powerful, all three of you, that I could weep, because I am a weeper. And I must just say, it's an honor to be here, and,
Do you need the mic?
I don't need a mic. I don't, do I?
Okay. Can the people on the back here? Okay.
And I said coming in that it's nice to be among my posse. People who think like me, who believe in the dignity of the human being. I'm gonna cry anyway, and who are not afraid to say so. I'm an academic, I work in a university, it's like, you know, it's a great place, I've been here so long. But as, Erica affectionately referred to us, we are old crusty feminists. We've been around a long time, a few of us. I was insulted at first, and then I took pride. We've been at this for 60 years, fighting for women's rights and human rights. In a time in other eras when it was okay to do that. Now I'm affectionately referred to as an artifact. You're an artifact, Barbara. You're an old hippie. You belong in a museum. Somebody told me that. Times are shifting. You all know this. We know the world we live in. That's why it's so comfortable to be here, because we're not in the world we're living. We're more in the past. And I'm told that, Barbara, that the future is cybersecurity, the future is public policy, the future is administration. And I turned around and I said, but these are human beings. They're either offenders or they're victims or their families. They're not just to be processed and to be, you know, observed, but to be secured. So coming from the perspective of an academic, I listened to, was it Victoria? I teach juvenile justice. She's talking about the cycle, herself, her child, and the child. 3 cycles, generations of being involved in the system, which Judge Camacho sees all the time. Why? Because when we put someone in the system, things don't get better, they get worse. We listen to Rich talk about profoundly his own power to fight a system that's not helping him at all. We listen to Jessica, man, can you speak? The power of the terror of the system. So I'm speaking here, probably, you're gonna label me a radical, and maybe that's not a fair thing to say, but the system is what we all need to change, and we need to have the power and the strength to challenge it at a time when that is not kosher. And I do that in school, but I'm aging out. So I guess the answer is for the next generation to take the torch. The 3 things that I say in class the very first day is I'm going to blow every assumption you have. Crime is not free will. The law doesn't work for all of us. And the answer is not more social control. Crime is complicated. The law doesn't work for all of us, nor is it written for all of us. And the answers are more in social justice than criminal justice. So I'm probably doing more lecturing than I should be, but I think that the power of the story and our ability to advocate and our ability to listen. We need to listen to people more, and we need to teach players in the system to listen more. I think of I don't know if you were talking from a woman's point of view or a male's point of view, the terror of looking at these officers. Judge Camacho talks about the kid on the suicide ward, the terror of the officers. Rich talks about the terror of the officers. We have to build humanity back into the players, and we have to build the soul back into the system. And I'm not sure how to do that. All I can say is that's why I'm on Earth. And, you know, I invite anybody else to help in that crusade, because it's gone, or it needs strength. So I'm sorry if that was more of a lecture than a question, but can that initiate anybody else to get on board?
Yes, so just what we'll do is have the panelists sort of responding to each other in terms of what they heard for a couple of minutes, and then we'll sort of engage the whole audience. But one thing, just one St. Joseph's experience was one of the professors in Barbara's department and working with us. They were always using the books that had been written behind bars, and our first book that we published, Voices, was something that two corrections officers were actually teaching in the Corrections Academy. And for a year and a half, nobody was allowed to graduate until they read the women's stories. They had to, because there were mostly men, the 150 people who were reached before the higher guard in the jail got wind of it and closed down the program. But there were mostly men. They had to take them home in case they were afraid to cry in front of one another. But in one of those classes, which I'll never forget, that was using the book, there was a young boy who wanted to be either a police person or corrections officer. And he looked at this book and he said, well, why do I have to read about all these bitches and whores?
Yeah.
And I mean, it took your breath away. But by the end of the semester, in terms of what the story could do, these stories could do, he was writing very, very different reflections. And this, to me, is the heart of why it's so important to use these stories in criminal justice classes, but in all classes, in humanities classes as well. So any thoughts from any of you just hearing each other?
Sure. Just following up on what you said about how do we change hearts and minds? The real problem is not the system, it's the people who don't care in our communities. They can change the system if they want. They don't care. To them, these are bad kids who are a menace to the community, lock them away. So the key is reaching those people in our communities who can actually change the system because they have the power and the money, and reaching them. And you can reach them we can reach them through our voices and the stories, listening to the stories of those who nobody else will listen to. Changes you, it moves you, it compels you to speak for them and advocate for them and to empower them to have their own voice. Yeah, so I speak, I'll give you the example of human trafficking. Back when I started in the court system in 1985, prostitution, these are bad girls, like my friend Rachel Lloyd from Gem said, these are bad girls who like doing what they're doing and they should be in jail. Lock them up. When I first started to draw my part, it was like, these are prostitutes, almost like spitting. I spoke and spoke and spoke. At the beginning, empty auditoriums. Yeah, I would challenge people. Let's fill it up next time. As I'm speaking to her again, my kids would say, auditoriums got more filled until they were standing room only. And now we are changing the laws as they back trafficking victims in New York State. That was a long, painful process. We, kindred spirits, souls in this room, need to go out into our community and speak and speak and speak to the people who can actually change the system and tell them stories. Because if they hear it, they cannot help. They cannot help but be moved and change hearts and minds.
Can these stories appear in newspapers? I mean, you have like publication rights and copyright restrictions, because I know you publish a lot. Can these be, published in more mainstream media?
If anybody in this room has any ideas, I know Newsday did articles about the project years ago, but I think it's so important for it to be in mainstream media. My dream really is, I'm a fan of the NewsHour. If only I could see the NewsHour doing, literally featuring everything you've just heard and everything you're about to hear. I think that the idea of in this world where there's such an unequal power system, that it is a question of trying to go to those who have some kind of power to do this. So, you know, just other thoughts first from the panel and then all of you.
Okay.
So,
Just listening to you, I guess that's where I'm gonna go with my response. As Erica said, I run an organization in Buffalo, New York called Mad Women in the Attic. It's a feminist mental health and madness literacy organization for people who've been affected by the mental health care system. When I say affected, most of that means harmed. My story is my story. It's not told from another perspective. It's something that I've lived through when I was institutionalized, and I was institutionalized through criminal justice. I was institutionalized through a police officer's investigation of my writing. So there's a lot there. That's not the whole story, but it's a scene before I was taken to the hospital from my life. And so having been through mental health court, I have a little bit of an idea of how that mental health system works. I work with people who have been really hurt by it. The question for me is, you know, who's able to fight? You're saying community. You have the academy. I'm also a PhD candidate. So, you know, the work I do in the classroom, I connect with this. But there's a lot of breakdown of who's willing to listen to who. So you have, you know, systems, you have hospitals in our area. Attorney General Letitia James just came to Buffalo, New York for what she called a mental health hearing to hear from the community about the mental health system in Buffalo. I saw this as something I've never seen, at least in my life in Buffalo, and people were invited from the community. Of course, the power brokers and the institutions were also there at the table, and not everyone got to be heard in the physical day of hearing, but everyone was welcome to submit testimony in written form that will be on the official record. I saw that as a powerful example of listening across power positions. And so I can't help but think, you know, I look out here and I believe that the people that are sitting here care about carcerality and trying to change our carceral system. But the issue is we need to get in a conversation with people at all different places in the system and outside of it and grapple with some of this. And how do you do that? How do you, if you're in the criminal justice system and you don't have such a nice, caring judge, you know, how do you make your story heard so that things are affected in the justice system? But then changing policies, what I'm really interested in, ultimately, because the justice system works with policy. But again, who are the power brokers in policy? I've been talking about policy for many years in my life, and I certainly studied it, and I do work at the University of Buffalo with that. But I guess I think there needs to be a more public understanding of how policy is written, made, voted on. And, you know, in law classes, you'll be learning about that, but what about the community? How can we learn about it?
yeah, so good.
Absolutely. When we talk about these systems, but these systems are structures. It's people that run the system, right? To be honest, unity, right? Like unity, like sticking together. What will happen if everybody in Suffolk County refuses to go to work tomorrow? There will be uproar, right? Like immediate, right? And as you expressed earlier, you know, it sounds radical, but it's true, right? Like when people stick together, change happens, right? When people unify and come together, people pay attention, right? People are forced to pay attention, right? And that change happens in a number of different ways. Like I said, if everybody who believes in the humanity of people and believes in the things and the stories that we are speaking about today decide to come together, right, and make a stand or make numerous stands or make different stands, we will garner a lot of attention. And not only that, things will change immediately, right? But also, when we come together, we form a community. So if no one else will do the right thing by certain populations or certain people, we can, right? So in that way, we stop asking for help and we will come to help, right? If no one else will provide job opportunities Instead of begging and asking for job opportunities, we become a community where the entrepreneurs who believe in the things that we are saying and the people who are willing to work very hard, who do not have occupation at the time, we connect, right? The individuals who are going through trauma, whether it be due to their past experience or different aspects of mental health, we connect them with the people who understand and can help walk them through the different things that they experience. So in short, I would say that we stop asking for help and we become the help and we become the model that we would like to see in society. And even if we start small, we can start extremely small, but small, consistent, and solid will eventually expand to medium, consistent, and solid, which will eventually expand to large, consistent, and solid. And it's not, and yeah.
Yeah, so that's great. In terms of the audience, just responses, ideas, you know, how can we pick up on everything that stories can be? And I just want to add that we're talking about speaking, we're talking about telling our stories. And I think we have to think about how can these written stories go the extra mile? What are we going to actually be doing with these written stories? How can we who are producing them really become the help, as you said? So anyone, just, you know, okay, Marcellus.
Well, for the story aspect of
Okay, talk loud, maybe.
all right, yes, ma'am. For the story aspect of it, what you just said was written stories and how Mr. Paul just did it, the enactment of different scenes. Compact those stories and push them out into segments. You can get them to the youth extension stand or whatever it is, social media and all this. I think if you hit with some of these messages that they hit with the negative stuff. You know what I'm saying? You're dealing with some positive, not only you, these two young brothers right here. Once they put something out, it's all positive. All got his own network, I got my own network. Network we try to reach is those two individuals right there. Hofstra University is in the mix of starting a re-entry to story, community re-entry to story. That's that small group, like-minded individual people that want to make a difference by using the university and, as he said, by coming together. Different aspects of the table coming together to fill of the greater good. That's what it's about. With these collective minds inside these rooms that's here right now. We got everything we need in these rooms right now. Maybe not a lot of people. There's a lot of different institutions, a lot of different people, different spectrums of this criminal justice system. But we can all figure out on this small scale, to meet once a month on Zoom or whatever the case it is, then we can continue to grow. But like you said, unity and consistency.
Thanks. Yeah, so that's that.
I like what all you've been saying. And, I heard something about changing hearts and minds, and I heard a difference about criminal justice compared to social justice. The place I would start would be having a mindset that if it weren't for the grace of God, so what?
Yep.
So often in society, we say, you know, oh, look, how could that person have been a prostitute or did this or did that? And we put ourselves up on some kind of self-righteous pedal. I've been incarcerated 30 years plus in some of the worst places that you can imagine. Living down more adequately is world-renowned brutality. Majority of my adult life is here. I'm also a prostitute. In regard to the kind of in my latter years, so the privilege to be with you fine people. But in order to change those parts of mind, I think we have to look at people as not being disposable. And that I could have been in that building. Something that I was faced with many years throughout that school system where you're constantly being dehumanized, is to realize that there's two dichotomies. There's personal responsibility, which that's big, especially within a conservative aspect. And then there is, there are social reasons for these things. And that's not an excuse. That's not a justification for one. But some of these criminal things come about because a person, I think I heard earlier, is born addicted to a mother that has been using heroin or crack, that doesn't have a two-family household, that in my case, have alcoholism in the house, that have violence in the house, that sees their mother being attacked, but you're being broken. You don't want to be violent. And how in the world do you end up being a violent offender? And it traumatizes. Again, it's not a justification, but there are elements that lead to criminality. So there has to be a social justice part of this, and not just a punitive aspect. And so if we could change the minds of people to realize that they're not inherently evil. Everybody has a flaw in their personality. There's no one that is righteous, no, not one. And to be able to extend that compassion and realize that there'll be restoration no matter what someone has did in the worst moment of time, that second that they make a bad decision. That does not define who they are. If we could make that clear to them, get them off their pedestal, look at it as a certain segment of people that are not my gender, that are not my culture, that are not the skin color of me, and then that means they need to be put away from me, so I can live my life more superior to them. That's a message that we have to get through your writings and through your actions.
Hey everyone, my name's Pete Travers, and I feel like I've come full circle today. About 20 years ago, I had a short internship with Herstory after graduating from St. Joseph's College, and then I got my master's in social work here at Stony Brook. And my career took me in a lot of different places, and I'm just going to share it for people listening because that's why I'm here, to continue to build bridges to see how my skill set can match with any of yours and help. So spent a lot of years working in foster care and then in child welfare, some organizations on the island, worked on some projects with the Camacho. And a year ago, I joined Chase Bank under their racial equity commitment as a community manager. So there's 150 of us across the country who provide financial help and education. We work in schools, jails, community centers, wherever. My specific area is Patchogue, Shirley, and Belport, but there's 6 of us on Long Island, and like I said, 150 across the country. So I'm here to just add the element of financial literacy to all the work that everybody's doing, and also part of my role is telling the story. So how we help individuals across banks build wealth for their families and for generations. So reentry work, any work that anyone's working on, if you want to partner, I'm happy to join future Zoom calls. Like I said, I feel like I really came full circle here, and I'm happy to be reconnected to Herstory, and just excited to see what can come out of this conference. With the partnership.
Please don't leave without giving us your card.
Anyone else or realize it was a long afternoon or early afternoon? We'll be having a short break and then coming back for the second panel, which should be equally powerful. And so this will give us a chance to more informally mingle. We have some refreshments now.
Across the
And
hall.
yeah, so it's right across the hall. And yeah, should we say that we'll come back at 2 o'clock, or should we get it tomorrow? 2 o'clock. I mean 3 o'clock. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so thank you all.
That's very nice. Very new. The card, I'll check my cards, like flew in from Buffalo, I might not have brought it, but I don't, give you my information, I looked here to me. Maybe we can just do it here on, you have cards. Want to do virtual? Oh, wow. Nice. Sorry, let me get my phone. It's incredible. My gosh.
Yeah, yeah. But honestly,
Well, yeah.
actually.
I have your email and everything. Oh, wonderful. Great. So I'm
Look at this, it's so funny. I should take a picture of this. Oh, is this you just? Do you want, should we put it on, mute?
Stop it, do 2 segments of. I don't know which one I should do.
Say hi, everybody.
Yeah, I don't have, this is just totally recording. This is the Zoom, but okay.
God.
I've never recorded something so long as this. So I'm like, can my computer handle this? I don't know. Let me see here. We'll just mute.
So go ahead. Oh, no, I didn't. No. It's time. Okay, so hi again, everyone, and, we're going to jump right in. Okay, yeah, thanks, so we're going to jump right into our second set of readings and, and I think it will be a real treat. Our first reader will be Barbara Allen, who is the founder of Prison Families Anonymous, which has recently merged with Prison Families Alliance. And, this amazing story, which I won't give away because Barbara will be reading the first chapter of her book that was written in a combination of 3 different Herstory workshops. It was started at the Patchogue Arts Council gallery space and community workshop. And then Barbara began to write it more seriously in the couple of years that we spent working with the children of the incarcerated, who actually became the guides for sort of daring all the older writers to go deeper. And then the year that Barbara and I worked together in Riverhead Jail. And anyway, you will meet Barbara on what we call page 1 moment, knowing that this opening chapter leads to over 60 years of, not to give much away, but one sort of lonely, frightened school teacher who noticed that everybody else around needed connection as much as she did. And she's made miracles. And we do also have the author of the new play about Barbara, and which we hope to be able to bring here to Stony Brook. So anyway, Barbara.
Okay, so or you want to microphone, so that would be some nice indifference to my age. You get away with so much. Thank you. I was also a primary school teacher, so my voice is kind of loud. But okay, it's just a pleasure to be here. And I thank you so much. And it was a very hard act to follow. So you'll have to excuse me if not. But all right, my book is called Doing Our Time on the Outside. Not that I'm carrying it. And it starts not me. This was 1968. Yeah, we have a magnifying glass. I took out the double stroller and put Tina in the back and Brenda in the front. It was 40 minutes after leaving the Nassau County Jail, 45 minutes after my visit with their father, my husband Gene. I hoped the guard would allow him to look out onto Carmen Avenue and get a glimpse of his girls. This was our once-a-week ritual since Dean had been arrested a year earlier. We knew that he would soon be transferred to an upstate prison where our routine would have to change. How strange what eventually was now pro forma. I knew the route. It was 20 minutes from the home we had shared and where the girls and I still lived. I knew the guards, and they knew and trusted me. They might have even liked me. I had gotten used to seeing Jean behind a plexiglass window and speaking through a phone, discussing the intimate details with someone to my left and someone to my right. And the knowledge that someone else might be listening into these calls. It wasn't okay, but it was accepted. Tina and Brenda had not had any contact with their father for more than a year, not since a week before he was charged with murder. No one under the age of 16 could visit at the Nassau County Jail. The girls were 2.5 and 3.5. They could not speak to him or hear his voice. Phone calls home were not permitted. They could not read his letters. The words were squiggly designs on a legal pad, and they meant nothing to them. It was up to me to keep his memory alive in their minds. But did I want to? Should I? As we left the jail to head home, I felt exhausted. On that day, it was just my girls and me. Marjorie was usually with me. Dear Marjorie, a co-worker, was barely an acquaintance. After hearing about the terrible event, she packed a suitcase and told me that he would be staying with me for a while. You will need help with the girls, and here I am, she said. And there she was indeed. I leaned on her both physically and emotionally. Sometimes my knees shook, and I didn't think I could make it from the parking lot to the street. These outings with Marjorie occurred after my visits with Jean, visits that were draining, frustrating, and just plain sad. There was a routine. I would walk into the processing room where Walter greeted the visitors. Of all the guards and correction officers I would run into over the years, Walter was the least intimidating and the kindest. How grateful I was that my first experience at a jail had Walter as the visiting room receptionist. I was so frightened the first time. I walked into that room that I went through the initial processing like a robot. As I recall, Walter looked at my driver's license, told me to leave my belongings, including all jewelry, in an assigned locker. I think they allowed me to wear my wedding band. I don't remember if they wanted me or if they had a metal detector as they do now. Much of those days are still a blur. I am more aware of the feelings than I am of the actual events. I do remember that one of the officers called up to the tier and told them that the inmate, Herman Jean Allen, had a visitor. And then I was finally allowed to go through the first set of gates. When those gates clanged behind me, I jumped and felt my heart beating as I am now. My body was shaking. I thought it was going to explode. And I barely could catch my breath. After the first gates closed, I was left for what must have been seconds, but seemed like hours. And I thought it was much longer, trapped inside the cage. Finally, they opened the second set of gates and I could see into a large room with stools facing a wall. Plexiglass and a telephone was on the wall. If you remember the old movies that you used to see where you had to talk through a plexiglass and just talk on the phone. And I was waiting on a small stool, waiting for Jean to come in through the inmate's door. After waiting what seemed an eternity, Jean appeared. He was script searched before and after each time we met, the humiliating price he would pay to be allowed a visit. He took his seat on the opposite side of the plexiglass. We each picked up a phone receiver and tried to have a natural conversation, aware that every word we said was probably being listened to and or recorded. The scattered bits of conversation from others were background noises as we tried to speak. I had so many questions. There was so much that I did not understand. Also, there were practical concerns. I was left with a house we had purchased only 6 months before. There were unpaid and unanticipated bills, insurance payments to deal with, leaks and creaks in the house. I was overwhelmed. I didn't believe that I could survive this on my own. Chapter 1. Yeah. I feel the emotions. It's. Wow. Yeah, you do. I'm still back in that place.
Yeah, and I remember when Barbara decided that she would start with that moment of pushing the stroller.
Yeah.
And just took this writing journey, never really dreaming this book would be all over the world.
I can build a copy in Australia.
Anyway,
My little Tina and Brenda are 56 and a half and 57 and a half.
and so, our next readers, I'm very, very excited, are Marcellus and Asia Morris. And we felt it was very important to bring the story of just healing, doing good, that both of you are doing, you know, out of decades of incarceration really passed down. And, you know, I think it's a beautiful tribute, a message to second chances, but also a real call to our society that we need to do better. And we need to do better about targeting people who have been involved in the criminal justice system in their youth, and then being so hard on them about other types of things that come up. So as you listen, and I think it will probably be more powerful if you stand. I don't know what to say. And they'll be talking to me more during the panel about the whole process of this work writing together, but for now we'll just hear the stories. So much. Do you want to stand? Yeah.
Microphone check. No, I can get down to school.
Let's see. You know what, Maria Teresa, I think we should put another, we can put this under. Yeah. Okay. There, I'll make sure that you're in the picture. We're gonna make sure you're in.
First of all, I appreciate this opportunity, everybody that gave it to me, Erica Duncan especially, pushing me to write this on some Zooms and things of that nature. Oxford University for believing in me, different people that have believed in me. I'm gonna read my story. I can't do it like Mr. Paul did. He was like a orator or something. Coming from Nassau to Rikers, where I was being held because I had assault on the CO case in Nassau. The ride is always long and gloomy. The crowd are holding themselves. The smells of humans being in such small space during summer creates an odor of indescribable. must, urine, sweat, feet, and the toilet in the middle of the cell, nowhere to sit. And God forbid someone has to take a number 2. Remember, it's just a toilet with no privacy. Remember, this is summer. So the heat compounds the smell, which raises tension on all levels. As we line up like modern day slaves, I get back to the block. The first thing I want was a shower. As the water runs down my body, here I am, a 2-time loser, facing another case. I can't help but reminisce when I first came to jail. Nassau County, E2 Maine, House of Pain was the exact name of the tier. I remember most of the names. Word is Bond, Be Original, Hans, Aga, R.I.P., Fuji, R.I.P., Messiah, Bebe, BMX, Just Born, Shabazz, Devon, Shamel, Kev, R.I.P. The pain was real. 23-1 most of the time. What you know about 23-1? Locked up, never seeing the sun. We always signed up for school just to get out. Most of the brutality came from us. Hurt people, hurt people. So you have a bunch of 16 and 17-year-olds hurting on the inside and outside. One of the most horrific situations I saw once was a youth tied another youth butt naked to the bars and left him there. I had been tested, gotten jumped, commissary taken. Sneakers would have been taken, but the adults didn't want them. Be Original, Word is Bond, Aga, Raheem, Hans, ran the tier. They used to tell me I would run the tier one day. It was like they were training me for upstate and using me as a doja at the same time. Also, I figured out how to sneak weed inside. Eventually, I was doing the same stuff to others that was done to me. Once you taste power, some sort of power, you like it. Power is never given, always taken. I thought about my second bid, how in Texas, I was shot through the front window, hit in my leg by the police. How in the small town, Tig, Texas, where the CEO was the fireman and the judge, I just needed to get out of there. I had just come home off of 9 years from 16 years old, just barely made 2 years home in New York. I did feel like a slave at times. In Texas, I felt like Kunta Kinte. Had to literally go to the fields, could not call the CO guards, but CO had to call them boss. Up at 4 in the morning, field by 6. I was done with crime, but here I go again on trial for assaulting a CO off a parole violation for carrying an Army Swift knife my daughter gave me for Christmas. I have a son about to be born, and two daughters I hardly know. I get on the phone and find out the news that I had a son. She had named him Marcellus Jr. My mother was still alive, and she begged her not to name him Marcellus. I wanted to name him Tupac Morris. Reason for not wanting the junior, did not want my past criminal record to reflect on him. That night in the cell was the lowest time. Glad a son was born, but being in the cell at this time, a 3-time loser, hope dies. Can't blame this on my youth and poor choices. Reality set in real fast when those lights go out. During the day, I can escape through the law books, gym, and mess hall. At night, you gotta face yourself. I used to grab the bars and hold them as tight as I could for a minute or two, just to feel the cold steel of the bars. Wanted it to run through my body, then I would attempt to go to sleep, usually reading some sort of law concerning my case. That night, rest would not come. As I tried to go to sleep, thinking of the courthouse guards trying to get me to take a 1 to 3, looking back, they knew the case was bogus because they knew it was hard to lose a law group, which was critical to my defense, trying to fight my case. Reading Brady Rosario, interest of justice, travesty of justice, and the judge would continue. The jury literally stated, we come to this decision with a heavy heart, thinking of how I rolled the dice and lost, sentenced to 7 more years. How will my son grow with no father? Will my baby mother bring him to see me? Will he grow to play sports, or will he get lost in the streets and gangs? December 13th, 2007 was my release date. All appeals exhausted out of 7 years. I did another 6. I had 3 kids. I had only been around Asia, my older daughter, which was a brief time, Isis for a few months of her life, and Marcellus Jr. one time in 6 years on a visiting room floor. First, I had to track the address down. I really had nowhere to go from day one. I had used a lady friend address with the understanding I would find my way once I got out. Once I found the address, I arranged for me to come over to take my kids out. Isis and Marcellus Jr. had gotten some funds and was prepared to take them out. My baby mother was living with someone and I did not want to rekindle. I was bitter. She had left me upstate alone, not thinking. I left her and the kids alone. Then your mind starts to play tricks on you. I'm wondering to myself, in this courtroom, can my baby girl take this pain? The yells at night when the pain gets too much and someone just lets out a scream, or the muffled crying in prison. Men cry in the dark with their face in the pillow to muffle the sounds. What about my grandson's father in jail and now the mother? What is the Creator trying to tell me? Or show me? Could this be kids paying for the sins of a father? So many thoughts go through my mind. Before she reads, there was supposed to be somebody else up there reading with us, and that's Marcellus Jr., because he's home right now. But he didn't make it, because he didn't stick to the patterns. He's still free, he's still struggling, and we pray for him that eventually he will get on the right path. Go ahead.
Hello, everybody. I'm not as nervous. It's a nice crowd, nice and relaxed, good energy. Thank y'all for that. I'll go ahead and start. My biggest fear in life is to be taken away from my son. My body,
You need to be a little louder.
is it on?
It is.
Yeah. My biggest fear in life, it don't seem like it's
Yeah, much better.
my biggest fear in life is to be taken away from my son. My body feels hot and my hands are sticky from sweating and waiting. As I look for sympathy from the judge on this day, I knew in the back of my mind I had to go to the back in due time. I had been to bullpens before, but nothing more than a day. I wanted to explain my past. I was on probation for not telling on my boyfriend at the time, who left me in a hotel room alone when cops came in, wrong place, wrong time. Now here I am standing facing 3 years for protecting my son. Looking at the judge, will she see just another Black woman on the assembly line on this unjust criminal justice system? I felt hurt, regretfulness, and pain because I knew I would be taken away from my family. I shed tears as I looked back at my grandmother and parents crying once the judge sentenced me. As the door shut behind me, I felt that alone feeling when you are about to enter a dangerous situation. I had to stay in the county jail, so I was coming from losing trial, but I was mixed with the people who have been in jail for a while. Some of the women tried to say the time will go by fast. Others were fresh in from the streets, detoxing off of drugs. I could not help but the tears just came. 3 years for protecting my brother and my son. 3 years, what's gonna happen to my son? Although he has 3 grandmothers, it's nothing like leaving your son behind. That pain worse than the judge giving me 3 years. I had been to visit jail before, but never knew what was going on in the back. I sat down on the cold bench and basically cried. They knew I was new to the inside. The first person that tried to console me was a girl named Madeline. She received 15 years, I believe, and was in the best experience and also content with her time. And she told me I would be okay. She gave me a hug and I could not stop thinking of my son still. The first night after the tears and making it to the cell, I lay looking at the ceiling thinking, how? While growing up, while my father was constantly incarcerated, a part of me always wondered what jail was like. Well, now I know. And to make matters worse, my son's father is incarcerated as well. I can't help but wonder if this will affect my son. A part of being incarcerated, you lose yourself and then you find yourself again. The hard part is coming home and finding yourself on the outside with so many temptations. Also the urge to want to catch up on all your lost times. Gratefully, I recently just found myself. It took me a few times losing myself and I'm still learning things about myself each day. I honestly feel had I not been stripped for 3 years of my life, I would have known how to be a better parent sooner and I would have found myself sooner. I also want to say while in there, this is off, not on here, but piggybacking off of being a better parent sooner, when incarcerated, you are numb to think about your child. So I didn't think of my son while I was in there. I just pushed him out of my head. So unconsciously coming home, I still don't think about him. I was thinking about myself first, and I just recently came to that term, writing this right here, and thinking, and thinking, and thinking. So you unconsciously are numb to other people's feelings, showing compassion. You so used to being strong to just think about yourself and trying not to think about the outside so you could do your time and get by without sitting around crying, because crying just makes you tired. I did cry the first day or two, but after 2 days of crying, you don't really want to cry because you still got to do your time. I just wanted to throw that in there. I also said, and be a better parent sooner. I would have found myself sooner. I also wouldn't have this new outlook on judges, jails, and law enforcement. I would like to thank God, my son Christopher, my family, and all my friends for helping me get through all my good and bad times, and for giving me motivation and confidence to do this speech. And I also want to thank Herstory and everybody here today. Thank you.
So it's wonderful. Yeah, so it's always, I think, important to just take these moments of just taking it in and, you know, being really, really moved. And when Marcellus and actually first before I met Asia began to talk about just really wanting to use this writing experience as a kind of family healing. You know, it's just beautiful. It's probably the highlight of my week, to be working with both of you together, even on the Zoom screen. So our final reader will be Maria Soraya, whom I've known for quite a number of years, from when she first decided to train as a facilitator to be able to maybe make a difference and run workshops with incarcerated people struggling with mental illness and the law, and not the people, the parents of. So anyway, and Maria can read. That's the high recording, like,
I think it's perfect.
okay.
I'm much smaller than you. Anyway, I just wanted to preface, I mean, talk about having acts to follow. I'm the last one. So it's all of you were just awesome. I am going to be, I just wanted to say that what I'm reading today is what I wrote when I was training with Erica. So it's still with me, and it still brings me back to those days. So it's about my son. First, a phone call. Can you bail me out? Well, will he OD? Will he jump bail? Will he do something else to make matters even worse? Well, I'm his mom. I couldn't leave him. I remember the corner of Queens Boulevard, across from the cavernous, threatening criminal court building that always filled me with dread and sorrow. It's a place home to the abbreviated stories of so many of our punished poor and seriously mentally ill. I used to be so smug, quite certain I would never have a reason to even drive past this ugly gray house of judgment and pain. It was approaching evening in February, cold and cloudy on the widest, possibly busiest boulevard in Queens. I drove, willing my naturally unobservant, preoccupied self to focus, to find the right corner where he waited. And then I saw him, pacing, on the corner in light institutional brown pants, hat, and absurdly matching even tan slippers. He was no longer my beautiful little boy that stole my heart. How could it be that he amounted to this? Was I rescuing him or the addicted, paranoid, schizophrenic man he became? The boy that guided me on truck tire tubes down the shallow, gurgling, gentle, and whip-like turns of the Beaverkill River needed me to post bail and take him to the ER. He needed me, his mom, to return to life among the free. Released, he was without his own clothes, his wallet, his car keys, license, phone, money. How could anyone be released from jail without all of these things? Well, he was mine, robbed not only of these things, but shackled by his addiction and his mental illness. Did I do the right thing? I can only now remember the call. Pee-wee, pee-wee. It was the pee-wee bird that my mop-headed, hazel-eyed 8-year-old called. Out of the treetops that balanced the horizon, across the gurgling river they came, right to us. They headed toward the golden, worn, and stitched back together canvas of our rickety camper. Among the sound of the shallow water flowing over the edges of the smooth rocks beneath, he stood with his brother on the shore, calling the birds, and they came. The older one calls now, but he calls from prison. After all these years, he finally agreed to get help. So he went. We went. In 2 indifferent chairs, we sat and waited after he got the Suboxone treatment. Here he was in his dirty construction jacket, shivering, sweat pouring down his unshaven face as he shook, wringing his hands, shaking his leg. Were we on the right track? Not knowing that if we left, he'd be denied treatment. We left. After being told he could die, and they still would not treat him, I raged. Haven't you taken an oath to do no harm? Aren't you supposed to be in the helping profession? The son who said I was the sick one, and he didn't need any help, made that giant leap. After years and years of addiction, lack of insight into his mental illness, he tried and tried and tried. He tried the Fortune Society. They couldn't help. There was a 3-month waiting list to see a psychiatrist. And then the clinic refused to treat him. Then he stopped trying.
Okay, so, again, the only person, well, you know, and, thank you, by the way, to, Joe Murphy for, when I, reached out to you about a month or 2 ago and said, could we include, you know, what happens with the revolving door with the mental health system in this whole project. And I feel this is such an important shift as we go into this next year of working on this and just making all these connections, you know. So the person you haven't met yet is Leanna Gervin, who really started our working with the carceral justice. Leanna, after a while, you get so moved by these stories, you're not thinking. Leanna is the director of the criminology program at Herstory University, and we've been doing all kinds of things with them, and also bringing criminology students together with high school students for years, and also bringing them together with people returning from prison. Right, keep that.
I have one.
Okay.
Erica asked me to speak from the heart and convey my honest reactions, but I have to confess, I had the pleasure of a preview those stories, and I did prepare formal comments, and that's because I wanted to talk just a little bit about the workshop and the importance of exposing students, not only criminology students, but all students, to the experience of people who have been through this system, of the families who have been through the system. So I want to read you some quotes from the participants from the workshop that we had at Astra, where students wrote stories with formerly incarcerated folks. So the workshop was an amazing experience, and I feel so lucky to have participated. Very dynamic discussions, an amazing facilitator. That was our own Victoria Roberts, actually. Brought issues to light, and meeting with and learning from formerly incarcerated individuals certainly will impact my life for years to come. Another one. I enjoyed the workshop a great deal and think it is a great way for criminology majors to get some practical exposure to the field we want to work in. My views on the criminal justice system definitely changed, and I feel I grew as a person. So those are very representative comments from the workshop. And these comments highlight the transformative nature of the stories that are generated in Herstory workshops. Stories like we heard today from Barbara, Marcellus, and Asia, and Maria, as well as from the participants in our first panel. I'm just in awe of the talent that's present in this role. Another one of my reactions is anger. I'm angry. I'm just incredibly angry at the institutions. So nobody can really remain to be unmoved after hearing those stories. More importantly, these stories are testaments. They're evidence of the inhumane and oppressive nature of the carceral states and its institutions. Why is it that human beings are treated as if they are disposable, as the gentleman that was sitting over there commented? People are treated as if they are garbage, and we see this amply across the stories on this panel. Moreover, it is as if the state is inventing increasingly more and more cruel ways to incapacitate and punish, as evidenced by Marcellus's piece, the piece that you can really experience very viscerally. Why is it that what kind of society is this where families become collateral damage, making the punishments that much more unbearable for the incarcerated, and visiting untold hardships and burdens, both material and psychological, on partners and children of incarcerated individuals? Over the years, I've seen my students transform consistently after coming into contact with formerly incarcerated people and hearing their stories. These stories I use as data to illustrate many academic criminological concepts and patterns that we have, Like for instance, I often use an earlier story written in a workshop of a young lady who was very excited to get her first post-incarceration job, only to have it denied after she reveals she has a criminal record. Very much like something we have heard from Rich on the first panel. These stories completely transform our understanding of what the criminal processing system is and what it does. The stories teach us that what we need in this country is incarceration recovery for the former inmates and their families, and that the trauma that is inflicted is large, collective, and almost intractable. Instead, there are no or scarce reentry services available, while family relationships that are most important source of support are shattered or compromised, as again, we see in the stories on this panel. The system is not designed to prevent crime. It is designed to inflict the maximum of pain. Very apt title of Marcellus' story, The House of Pain. Maximum amount of pain on those deemed dangerous by the carceral state. The crimes may be real, but the punishments are perverse and seem to be designed with particular cruelty to ensure maximum trauma, producing recidivism and reproduction of negative behavior from generation to generation, as we've seen in Asia's story. The stories heard here are a powerful cry to rethink the law enforcement systems we have, to shift from needless and harmful cruelty to pragmatic and humane solutions, to human mistakes, and of course to mental illness that are often, if not always, criminalized forever. So today, thank the readers for the images that they provided me with. Those images will stick for a while, how could they not? And I thank all the criminal system involved folks who bring us their experience so we can act upon it, demanding a system that focuses on prevention, peacekeeping, and restoration of incarcerated folks to their families in their communities.
I think we will do the same thing of just asking our panel to respond and then turning it over to the audience.
Microphone.
Okay, that was all, just that we'll ask the same thing of asking the panel to respond and then turning it over to the audience. So anyone on the panel?
Oh.
Okay.
I have so many to say. But I wrote here, I just took a couple of little notes to remind me of what I wanted to talk about. And what you so eloquently said about collateral damage, that's my first note that I took. The families are the collateral damage. We're the ones who, I say, we are the unknown victims of every crime that someone out there commits. That's one thing. I wanted to tell you about our support groups. Prison Families Anonymous, the organization I founded over 50 years ago, and that's why I have so much to say about this. I've been doing this for over 50 years. I can be the historian of the criminal justice system. But I started a program called Prison Families Anonymous. The anonymity was so important because our families were so stigmatized. And they hid, and they never ever wanted anyone to know. Even people that go to the same meetings, we had support group meetings, started in Hempstead 50 years ago, over 50, because I knew I could not do the journey by myself. I was scared to death. It's a system. I tell our families that it's like Alice in Wonderland going down the rabbit hole. When you get there, you have no idea what to expect. I'm trying to be real quick because I can take over. But we're now Prison Families Alliance. We threw away the anonymity, as I like to say, my friend who just left, Emily. We put our support groups on Broadway, off Broadway, I don't know, brag, but it's off Broadway. We had a play we called The Shared Sentences, and I said, we went from anonymity to Broadway. And there's two more notes. I wanted to say that everything we fought for over these many, many years, the system is taking back from us. I worked so hard to get contact visits into the prisons in New York State. That was it's going to be my epitaph. It's going to be put on my tombstone that I got. And now they're taking it away. They want to have video visitations, and I can understand that. And if anybody wants to talk to me about it, I'm perfectly available. I'm always available, of course. But don't take our one chance to hug and love our loved ones. And they're taking away our packages. We used to bring 35-pound packages a month, and some of my families here will attest to it. We left them up the hill at Sing Sing and wherever, and our hearts and soul were in those packages. It wasn't just fruit and vegetables, which our loved ones don't get in prison. And now we're not allowed to do that anymore. We can through a vendor, which will cost our families, is costing our families twice as much. But just want to leave you with the knowledge that we have support group meetings, which are virtual now because of the pandemic. Prison Families Anonymous became Prison Families Alliance. We have at least 10 virtual support groups a month. We have support groups for families who just general support groups. We have 2 support groups for families of sex offenders, because there are so many, and a lot of these are kids who are born and they're going away to prison. We have a support group for the children and the incarcerated. We have one on re-entry. If anyone would like to speak to me afterwards, I will be here, and thank you for your time.
I just wanted to draw to your attention that the focus for the National Alliance on Mental Illness is that there should be treatment, not punishment, for people who are ill. All over the world, no one does what we do. We incarcerate more people in this country than any other country on the planet. People who have a mental health problem and a drug problem are treated as public health issues. These are public health issues, not criminal issues. These are people that are ill, that need treatment, and they don't need to be further traumatized by the system that we have. I am very active in promoting criminal justice reform, and there are a lot of bills in the legislature. You know, one's a clean slate, so that when you get out, you have a chance of getting a job and housing. Another one is the bail reform is a whole other issue that people are really upset about, and all it was about people being incarcerated and being forced to stay in jail, even though they're not convicted of a crime yet, because they can't afford to pay bail. That's all it was. And now it's become this whole, battle cry that, this is why there's crime. There's been flat arrests since bail reform started. Statistics don't bear that out at all. But anyway, there was a gentleman here earlier who's from RAP, which is Release Aging People from Prison. We need to all, if you can, support these efforts at criminal justice reform. We need to close Rikers Island. Yesterday, last year, 10 years ago, it's a disaster. People are dying, and they keep dying in that horrible place. So these are some of the things that I'm concerned with and that I thought I would mention.
Yeah, the solitary.
And, okay, and the solitary confinement. For 8 years, I mentioned it before. I'm part of a Unitarian Universalist congregation in Manhasset. For 8 years, we worked on getting the whole bill signed into law that prohibits solitary confinement for more than 15 days. Can you imagine that there are people in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day, not just for a week, not for a month, not for a year, but for decades? And that law was finally passed about a year ago, and it's been completely ignored. So we know that these things are still happening in the jails and the prisons, even though it's illegal. So our own government agencies that are incarcerating people are violating the law. And so anyway, stay with us, fight. And we have to not only think, great, the law was passed, but we've got to be after them to make sure that that law is being followed. That's it. Thank you.
I know it's at the end of the program, and a lot of people, including myself, are ready to get out of here, but the important thing about this meeting, the coming together, is that if we can, again, I'm gonna reiterate, the CRT, the Deanne and Herstory University, for people to really join them, put some effort into that, and make that possible, eradicate some of these problems. Prison, as anybody has been in prison, and as she has just described in her story, it's a different world, different rules. So the guards run the penitentiary. So they can come down with executive law, executive orders, but if the prison guards inside there, that administration doesn't want some sort of change, then nothing's going to change. Brutality is going to persist, and not only on guard on inmate, but inmate on inmate. It's a mindset that has to be changed, and it has to start with us. It's only a few young people, some young college students, and one young man left them strong and stuck around. And these are the ones that can bring forth that change. I'm getting up there too in age. Dinosaur. You know what I'm saying? So we need that new blood. We need that new energy. We need more Mr. Pauls. I used to work for Strong. I know Strong organization. I know me. We need more of those type of support for our community. Love y'all, peace. We got to close out.
I wanted to thank him for bringing me out here and motivating me to come out here and speak. I forgot to thank. Now, I also wanted to say, while the way I did write a book, I had to be heard to become me. I'm in the process of doing woman empowerment events. And, I want to thank everybody in the room, the judge especially. Just hearing you talk, you're the most human-like judge I've been around. I've always avoided, I try to force myself to come get your car, but I'm not used to being around judges and those. It's a bad predicament, honestly, so thank you for sharing your story.
So listen, both of you, I have so much respect for you have overcome, what you've experienced and survived. I am not friends with the person that you are. I mean that. One of the images that came up when I was listening to you was, just by happenstance one time, I had my youth court participants sitting in the courtroom waiting to have their cases called. And a gentleman came out from the fence, and I'm looking at his criminal history, and I'm doing the math. And I said, sir, you spent 3/4 of your adult life in state prison. Yeah, Judge, I know. I said, sir, do you mind doing me a favor? Like, whatever, Judge. See those young men in the back? I want you to talk to them. He turned around, the officer like, let him turn around. And he spoke directly to them. And he told them his stories about each time he got out, and the lack of support, the lack of help, the lack of opportunities, the challenges. And those young men and women sat there like this. It's heartbreaking. And then, and Barbara, you made me cry, because I'm a crier too.
Yeah, I know.
Because you know what? One of the most heartbreaking things that happen in my courtroom every single day are the parents sitting there. Please, judge, help me. Please, judge. My son has mental health issues. My son has substance abuse issues. I can't get anybody to help. And I just get so frustrated. I say, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. Where are the resources going? There's a 6-month waiting list for that. There is, and then, so we have, I'm gonna sound like the radical now.
That's okay.
You've had all these politicians having press conferences about these great things they have done, about this great money that's coming down. Where is it? Who's getting it? Those questions. We all need to ask those questions because we ask it every day. We're supposed to have money for safe harbor. Where is it? Oh, I don't know. It have to go through that bureaucracy to that bureaucracy. It is a broken system that is not held accountable, that is cruel, it's unkind, and doesn't seem to care. So yell at the top of your lungs like I do almost every day. I get on the phone. What do you mean a 3-month waiting list? Money, it's got to be somewhere, but it's not going to the people who are supposed to get it. Scream about that, please.
To kind of piggyback on that, I want to bring something to people's awareness. There are reparations movements around the country that demand reparations for mass incarceration. And just a little plug, at Hofstra on the 22nd of this month, we're hosting a 2-part program on reparation for mass incarceration. And based on the work of a person who actually devised a method of how to compute these damages that have been leveled on communities and families. So it's in, of course, trillions and trillions of dollars. Of course, I have something else to say. But I want to respond to what you said. When my husband was arrested, now remember, this was 1968, before the Attica uprising. The attorney asked me if I wanted to say something to the judge, because I couldn't speak to the judge. I mean, that was totally off limits. And my husband murdered his father. That's why he went to prison. And I was shocked that he was going to prison. I thought he's going to wind up in the psychiatric facility. Never entered my mind that we're going to send him away. But the important thing I want to say is the judge sent word to me through my attorney that now my prayers were going to be answered because my husband was going to get help. And, you know, I was very naive. I was a 2nd grade school teacher and and I really, really thought my husband was going to get help. They helped him by giving him Borazine. They helped him by making him over. I eventually, when he came home, and he did come home, and he's deceased now, but he came home worse than when he went in. He became a domestic violence abuser. I'm not going to go on this one, but I can. But I wanted to just say that was how many years ago, and it's still happening today. And it gets very discouraging. Don't even treat them as such.
Microphone check, 1, 2, 1, 2. That would be good.
Did you want to say something else? And then we're going to start with the audience. Okay, so anyway, this has been an incredible day. So we really would like to hear from all of you. You know, how do we take our stories into action. You know, so, anyone from the audience or previous readers as well, you know. Okay, Tom. Let's see.
Just a comment, kind of short, I taught English for a lot of years and, I'm really impressed with this. I've seen some of the writings for the program and, it's just spectacular. I only wish I had known about it a long time ago. It was a long time ago. But I wanted to just share two phrases which come to mind to me all the time. And the first phrase, I didn't start using it in my classroom about 10 years because I didn't know it. But it's a 3-word phrase. This is a 3-word phrase from Mahatma Gandhi. And when I started using the word and using it as a story starter for kids, it was incredible. You want to think about this. 3 words. Make injustice visible. That's really what all of you are doing, and thank you all for doing it, and it's a very, very hard thing to do. But you can take that and say something slightly different. You can say, make justice invisible. The next, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't say that quite right, but what we're doing is make people invisible. That's exactly what this is all about. Make the problems invisible. Then you don't have to solve them. So that's exactly what we have to do. That's the challenge. 3 words. Put them on the wall. We talked about it all the time. Kids saw it every day. Don't be afraid to say that. Who's next?
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Oh, thanks.
I would like to thank Ms. Graham, not only Ms. Graham for bringing my kids here. That's my significant other. My 2 little kids got to witness me speak for the first time. Thank
Stories are very powerful. And we can really unpack them, right? So as I was listening to Brother Marcellus' story, I was hearing what he was saying, but then I was also like unpacking in my mind, based off of the language and the name, right? Like something as simple as number 2, right? Where it may go over other people's heads. Like it connected with me, right? It connected with me immediately, having that feeling, being on that bus. But also the names of the individuals that he mentioned that were on the table with him. It was very powerful to me, right? Because if you correct me if I'm wrong, but the names of the individuals seem like names that stem from the nation of God and earth, right? And I had a monkey who was incarcerated for 30 years, and when he was incarcerated, he couldn't read or write. Even while he was very educated and knowledgeable, even while he was my bunkie, he had problems reading. But he was very educated and knowledgeable because at the time when he was growing up, he was part of the nation of God. And they educated him and they helped him understand a lot of concepts and they tested him at the time, right? So I mentioned that to truly unpack or to truly call for the need to unpack certain stories, right? And really listen, because there's a wealth of knowledge and understanding in between the crevices of all of our stories. And also, stories are very powerful. This young man right here, as well as the other young gentleman who's left, created 3
stories that they made into movie form. And they'll be debuting them at March 22nd at the Unionville High School Library. So I would like to invite everybody. And we were also working on a story that, in collaboration with Herstory, that we don't have an exact date, but I would love to have everybody there also. But what I want to say about stories to me seem like a catalyst for the end, right? So the stories ignite passion, understanding, collaboration. And then maybe this is not the time for it, but what comes after the story, right? Or what comes before the story, if the story is at the end, like the follow-up work. Because a lot of times, I feel like we have amazing moments. We have moments of greatness, and not just within this work, but within our lives, right? We have moments of greatness where we reach high peaks, but it's very difficult to maintain that greatness. It's very difficult to maintain those moments. So I often ask, what happens after, or what happens before? How do we keep this up? How do we keep it going on? How do we continue to collaborate and actually do what we've been doing individually on a higher level?
I have one question for everyone on the panel up there. So as a young individual like myself, what is one piece of advice that you would give to not only me, but the youth that can spread awareness throughout the neighborhood about what we spoke about there?
What is the advice that, everyone on the panel could give, not only to him, but to other youth about what we should be doing next?
Yeah, about what we spoke about today to spread awareness.
Yeah, I'll talk about and then awareness about what we'll be doing next. So whoever on the panel wants to answer them. Yeah, thank you.
I just want to say to him, just continue, for you personally, just continue to stick around who you're around, continue to follow your dreams, continue to build. You already got it, little brother. You already got it. I'm making movies, I'm making films, whatever the next step for you is, don't be scared to ask for help. And now you got a whole bunch of room of other people who's looking at you. And if you need something, don't be scared to reach out to him. If he can't get it, if Sergio can't get it, if Mia can't get it, you reach out to Leanne, you reach out to the judge, you reach out to Ms. Duncan, whoever. Don't be scared to ask for that help when you need it. But if you're in a crisis, don't be scared to ask for your mentor when you really need it.
I want to first say, learn from others' mistakes. My grandma always told me that, but I had to learn from my own mistakes. Also, find yourself. Finding yourself will open the door of a lot of opportunities, and continue to find yourself your whole life. But finding yourself is the key to everything. And health is wealth too. And prayer works.
It's very.
I'll say what I say to all the people I know who are first going into prison. Stick with the winners.
Spread what you learned around. Tell everybody you know what you've learned here. And I think this has been recorded. Maybe you might want to play it one evening or parts of it for people that you know.
I would say question everything and read.
I'll tell you, what I say in my courtroom every day, again and again, young people, it's this. Kid, I know you're angry. I know you're mad. You've been betrayed, you've been let down, you've been lied to. The system hasn't worked for you. Stop being so angry. Reach out to people like Rich Paul, reach out to Strong Youth, reach out to Marcellus, reach out to, let them help you. You can't fight the world, kid. You can't fight the world, you lose. Don't get so angry that you become hopeless and that you don't care anymore. I have so much respect for you, kid. You know why? Because you're a survivor. If I had been where you are, When you've gone through in your life, I wouldn't be here, I'd probably be in jail. You're no different than me. I got the brakes, you didn't. Never give up and let it go, let the anger go.
I just feel that it's so important for you to continue doing all of the work that's really shedding light on what's going on very deeply inside you. And I think the story, my wish would be that the story that you started writing, that you'll continue it. We are having another event in which you'll get to hear his story and hear more of Rich Hall and Strong Youth. And Susan, just tell me so I don't get it wrong, the exact date. I think it's April. Do you know, Rich? I think it's April 18th.
If I'm not mistaken, it's
I think you're probably more accurate. April 16th. Okay. And anyway, we hope it's at the Uniondale Library. And it's part of another grant, which we should tell you about too, because the grant with Humanities New York began to lead to another project that we're doing with ACLS and the National Endowment for the Humanities to create a curriculum behind and beyond bars. And a lot of the people you've heard today will have stories in that curriculum. You'll actually, in a couple of months when it's ready, and our hope is that it will be used within and also beyond prisons all over the country and beyond. And we definitely have videos of Marcellus and Asia working, and also of Rich working. So, and I do want to send real kudos to Maria Teresa, has been behind the scenes, but none of this could have happened without her. And partnership, which began, I guess, back in September, where she began to take over the leadership of the two carceral justice projects, and the kind of collaboration and looking at not only what we were doing, but how we are doing it. It's just led to all kinds of marvelous things, including her becoming our associate director. So anyway, and this particular program would not have happened without her careful steering. So anyway, do we have any more comments, or did you? Yeah, okay.
I just want to ask, as me being a youth, and I've had a lot of friends, go upstate, serve like a couple of years, also had a couple of my friends pass away, God rest their soul. What are some programs that you would recommend, that I could recommend to some friends that no longer want to be in that lifestyle no more and want to leave that lifestyle and go on a straight and narrow?
Probably Judge Camacho.
So this is the problem, and I hear this all the time. Judge, why don't I have to wait to get locked up to be in front of you to get these services? Where are they? They should be out there in the community. They should be out there, not only available for kids who come to my part, for everybody. So I think the action plan is this, and I think everybody, what do we do next? So this is an idea. This is what I do. I go to all the communities. I go to Wyandanch, I go to Brentwood, I meet with the community leaders, I meet with the clergy, I meet with the superintendents, I meet with the people who are actually the people who have the power in those neighborhoods. And I come up with a resource list in that community. And I have a Rolodex that's about this big. If I have a kid from Wyandanch, these are the people I'm going to call. I have a kid from Huntington, these are the people that I'm gonna call. Perhaps coming up with our own island-wide resource list that is gonna be out there available to all of us. And we can simply, okay, we got this kid, and go out and do outreach as well. Let's go to the schools. I go to schools to speak all the time. Let's go out to the schools to speak. Let's tell them about these resources. Let's tell them about these people that are out there. And you know what the answer, young man? There are people, no matter what, some of the impressions and perceptions you may have, and your similar friends may have, there are people out there who care. There are people out there who want to help you. And I'm glad, nothing else, you understand this at this conference. This is what you get from here. There are people who care. So let's get together with a resource list, island-wide resource list. There are so many of us out there. I do it just by myself. I go out and I meet with all these people, and I get their cards, and I put in my Rolodex, and then I make phone calls. I got a kid that needs help. We had something that we could all have access to, that we can all go, and I think that would be really, really a worthwhile action plan.
Yeah, okay, Barbara. Short and sweet. New Jersey has a lot of problems, but they're all pretty progressive. And I was telling people the delicious banana bread. The delicious banana bread. But the new adage is not defund the police, which was a horrible phrase. I don't care what your politics are wrong, but the phrase is refund the community. And I think if we can get that out there, we're not taking money from someone, we're putting money where it starts. Crime doesn't happen at 30. I don't have to convince you it happens at 13. And the trauma that we heard today from all of you, the domestic violence, the trauma, the cycle. Corrections is too late. Police are too late. It is a public health issue, and the answers lie really in prevention. How do we do that? I don't know. If I knew, I'd run for office.
I have one more concrete idea, and that is, you know, as you were talking, I thought a model that we're experimenting with is the community, quote, campus, public humanities, but also intergenerational writing circles. And I believe that as a vehicle for getting community voices, and just hearing you today is one of the highlights, I think, of the afternoon. And I think that it's the young people who will teach those of us who are trying to take action what to do. And we have programs now actually within the classrooms in Wyandanch High School, in Hempstead High School, in Uniondale High School, in Westbury High School, in Long Beach High School. And I think that the heart of those programs, and often they're young people who are very, very challenged, is really to hear their voices. We have a program we've named, I Am Not a Statistic, to find the numbers and the stories that are told about communities. We need your voices to hear that the stories that are stereotypically told to discourage young people, to just throw them, away. So as well as getting resources and having lists of resources, I'm committed to creating the intergenerational writing circles. And I would, by the way, like nothing better than to persuade Judge Camacho to join the writing circle that would have you, that would have your young friends, that would have people in the courts, that, we have had our best writing circles sometimes have been county legislators writing with people who are impacted. So I think that when we talk about forming a group and the community we have in this room, I think, if we can find a format so that you're all hearing each other's stories. Too often young people are put in a silo and, it's like, we'll do something good for you or we'll teach you something. But really you can teach us something. And I think we need young and old And ideally, if the prisons allow, we need incarcerated and free riding together. We do have the, push-in programs, but it's all about students and academic things. When we were bringing student interns into the jails to write with the people in the jails, it was a very different picture. And when we were bringing corrections officers, so anyway, that's my dream. And if people are interested, make sure the lady also, really has done wonders to make this project possible, but has also worked in the jails. Contact the lady in back there and make sure that we reach out to you.
Yeah, I'll say something because
Barbara has something else to say.
I can't sit in the phone and not use it because I do have some advances, but nobody listens to me. First of all, alternatives to incarceration, community-based instead of prisons all up north and as far away as we can get them. There should be alternatives, there should be, treatment centers, as there are in other countries. I'm on the steering committee of the International Prison Family Conference, so we've had people from all over the country. It doesn't have to be the way it is. There's no reason for it to be this way. We had a program many years ago. It was called the DTC, the Diagnostic Treatment Center. And it took place in Clinton Prison, which was near Albany. And they work with McGill University over in Canada with the therapeutic staff at McGill. And the psychologist or whoever from McGill came into Dannemora, and they took their 300 what they called hardcore criminals. There were 300 multi-offenders. And they worked with them, and it was such a successful program that they stopped it.
Yeah.
Because first of all, they said, well, it costs too much money, but what is the cost of recidivism? I'm talking to the choir.
Yeah.
But there are solutions, but nobody wants to listen to.
My last comment, I think sometimes we go after the 7th and 8th and 9th and 10th graders. Young man, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. I think we have to drop down a little bit more, start catching some of these youth from the 3rd to the 5th grade. Because by the time they get to the 6th or the 7th or the 8th, they're already indoctrinated with it. They're about that life. Once they get to that age range, 3rd and 5th, you can kind of catch them. My last comment, for real. Let's borrow this too.
Okay, Thomas.
I just wanted to second what you said about intergenerational, about the intergenerational nature, and really encourage that, and I'd love to support it too. I don't remember where I heard this from, but somebody said that we have never been more segregated by age as a society than we are today. People don't have a grandmother in the house to help you grow up with, and your parents are out working. And, we're just segregated in so many ways. And you can add in the, stuff with the screens and all that stuff too. But we don't know people of different ages or have any idea what they're thinking largely. We don't even use the same communication platforms or whatever, but it's never been worse. We need intentional intergenerational activities, for sure.
And by the way, Barbara did write her book with the young people, and I think that workshop at Central Islip High School with the children of the incarcerated. And a funny story, because we were probably 10 years younger then or something, and they looked at us and they also looked at their school social worker. And one day they came in and they said, how old are all of you? And we sort of were taken aback, and they were terrified we'd die.
I promised I wouldn't, and that's why I'm here today.
Yeah.
There are programs, see, I didn't need the microphone. There's a program, and I don't know how many of you are aware of the Fortune Society in New York City. I started with them, I was on their first board of directors, it was 100 years ago. But they have a fantastic program for formerly incarcerated people who are homeless. They have a house in Riverside Drive. I would love an apartment there, it overlooks the river, and they have wraparound services. And it is one of the most effective reentry programs, I think, in probably the world that I. Yeah. But you see, there are lots of positive solutions. We just have to look at how few of us in yet. We should be packed.
Well, actually, there's like 30 or 40 people online watching.
Okay, good.
Oh, that's good.
Because we should, I mean, there's so much that can be done, and if we stick together and we do it, and again, intergenerational, I'm old. That's why I can speak whenever I want to get away with murder. But, yeah, there has to be the young people, there has to be, the next generation, all right?
No, nothing about us without us. Right? So nothing about you without your own input into what you want, what you think would be good for you.
Okay, well, thank you very much.